Chapter 1. And Lin stood at the top of the tall building, facing the noisy wind. He looked behind him. There was a group of fierce-looking men, slowly surrounding him. Stinking brat, let's see how you can run this time. If you have the guts, fly to the sky. The burly man in the lead held an iron rod, and a cruel look appeared on his face. And Lin knew that he had no chance to escape now. But when he thought of the consequences of being caught, his body couldn't help but tremble. That kind of life was simply inhumane. What to do? What to do if only I could fly? And Lin thought so in his heart. Then a hurricane appeared between heaven and earth, and his body was swept up. And Lin was astonished. He really was flying. He was being blown into the air by the wind. F***CK. He can really fly? The burly man in the lead saw this scene and became dumbfounded. In front of everyone, Lin flew out of the roof by the hurricane. Then the wind disappeared and he began to fall freely. Help! The wind howled, and the feeling of weightlessness from the rapid fall scared Lin into screaming. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And Lin kept roaring in his heart. The fear of impending death enveloped his whole body, causing every part of his body to tremble uncontrollably. On the roof, the burly man looked at Lin's free fall with a dumbfounded face. Then he turned to the crowd and slowly said, "That kid wasn't forced to jump off the building by me. The murderer was wind. You guys have to testify for me." The people behind him were also stunned in place. This wind came too strangely. Would anyone believe it? Not to mention others. Even they couldn't believe it when they saw it with their own eyes. And Lin looked at the ground that was getting closer and closer and closed his eyes in despair. He didn't expect his life to end in such a useless way. At this moment, a mysterious white light suddenly appeared and then wrapped around his body. A terrible feeling of supergravity also came at this moment, and then he felt like he was riding a roller coaster, rushing to the end, then making an arc and flying into the sky. And Lin screamed again. His body flew into the sky and landed on the roof again. The extreme weightlessness and the feeling of life and death made him feel dizzy. Then he vomited uncontrollably. Hey, young man, are you feeling better? At this moment, an ethereal voice reached Lin's ears. He raised his head and saw an old man looking at him with a face full of love. Behind the old man, the ferocious men who had come to capture him had all fainted on the ground. The old man's hair and beard were all white, and he had a sage-like demeanor. Golden immortal energy lingered around his entire body, giving him a holy and flawless appearance. Seeing this scene, Lin's body trembled, and countless scenes surged into his mind. Novels, animations, movies, all sorts of scenes began to appear in his mind. Wasn't the beginning of all those dreams the scene before him? Thump! And Lin kowtowed heavily, and with tears in his eyes, he said, "Immortal, thank you for saving me." The old man whom Lin called Immortal stroked his white beard and said with a smile, "I made a mistake in casting a spell just now, and scared you, young man. Speaking of which, why are these people chasing you, young man?" And Lin was stunned when he heard that. A mistake in casting a spell? So it was the Immortal's fault that he was blown away by the wind just now? However, the Immortal had saved him. After hearing the Immortal's question, countless grievances surged in his heart, and he said, "This is what happened. After my mother passed away, my father became addicted to gambling. He gambled away his house and owed millions of gambling debts that he was unable to repay. Then he ran away alone. I finally managed to get into Huaqin University, and at that time, the creditor found me, saying that he wanted me to repay my father's debt. Millions. How am I supposed to repay him? When my girlfriend heard that I owed a huge sum of money, she ran away without looking back. I was captured by the creditor to be a coolie, and he said that as long as my father did not repay the debt, I could not leave. However, that kind of coolie was not meant for humans. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I tried to escape. After that, the creditor sent a group of people to capture me, and that's what happened before." And Lin poured out his story with snot and tears, feeling that his life was bleak. What was the difference between a person who spent his entire life repaying debts and a salted fish? After listening to Enlin's story, the immortal had a look of sympathy in his eyes. He said slowly, "Young man, your life is really bitter. How about this? We are fated to meet, and I see that you are extremely talented. Why don't you let this immortal give you a system so that you can change your life?" Enlin's body trembled when he heard that. He had thought that being able to form an immortal fate with an immortal was already a great fortune, but he did not expect the immortal to be so generous and give him a system as soon as they met. "Grandpa Immortal, you're really too good to me. I really don't know how to repay you." Enlin looked at the old man in front of him with tears in his eyes. He was very touched. The immortal smiled benevolently and raised his palm to the sky. Then, an extremely pure white ball of light appeared in his palm. "Young man, come here and hold this ball of light in your palm," the immortal said to Enlin. Hearing that, Enlin couldn't wait to hold the ball of light. The ball of light in his hand emitted a trace of warmth, and the light emitted from the ball was extremely gentle. "Activate system transfer," the immortal said slowly. As soon as the immortal finished speaking, the white ball of light shone brightly. At that moment, the immortal said to Enlin, "Young man, quickly swear. Swear to accept this God of War system and never leave it for the rest of your life." God of War system? Such a domineering name. But why does this oath sound like a marriage declaration? Without much time to think, Enlin hurriedly said, "I swear to accept the God of War system and never leave it for the rest of my life." As soon as Enlin finished his oath, the ball of light whooshed into his body and fused with him. Then a voice sounded in his mind. Detected that the host has the Nether Heaven Tao Constitution. Qualified. System beginning integration. Enlin was very excited. He was so excited that he wanted to cry. He had thought that his life would be gloomy. He didn't expect things to take a turn for the better. He actually ushered in a life with a cheat system. The immortal was also very excited. In fact, he was so excited that he was crying. He looked up at the sky with tears streaming down his face. He knelt on the ground and cried and laughed at the same time. "Ha ha ha ha! You're finally gone. I've finally obtained a new life." "Grandpa Immortal, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Seeing the immortal's strange behavior, Enlin asked with concern. The immortal came back to his senses and wiped his tears. He knew that he had lost his composure. "I'm fine. I just thought of some unbearable past events, young man. After you receive the system, you have to work hard," the immortal said sincerely. "Yes, I will." Enlin nodded heavily. "Then, do you want to go to school to cultivate?" "I know a relatively good school," the immortal continued. "Go to school to cultivate? Only an idiot would reject that." "Of course I do. I really want to go." Enlin replied without any hesitation. The immortal smiled. He took out a golden piece of paper from his sleeve and handed it to Enlin. Then, he said, "This is my recommendation letter. With it, you can go to Xiaoxian United University to study and officially embark on the path of cultivation." Enlin's heart jolted in shock. It turned out that the immortal had already paved the way for him to become a proud cultivator. He solemnly accepted the recommendation letter from the immortal and looked at the immortal gratefully. "What's your name?" "Grandpa Immortal." "My name? I don't think I should say it." The immortal caressed Enlin's head with a sympathetic expression. "I have to go. Goodbye, young man." The immortal waved goodbye to Enlin before flying off into the distance. "Take care, immortal." Enlin bowed gratefully to the immortal in the sky. The immortal's laughter came from the sky. It was extremely carefree and unrestrained, as if he was venting all the grievances in his life. Why is this immortal so happy? Why does it feel like he's happier than me? Enlin scratched his head in confusion. At this moment, a female voice sounded in Enlin's consciousness. "Hello." This female voice was beautiful and pleasant, like the sounds of nature, making him shiver all over. Is this the system's voice? Enlin was bewildered. At this moment, an interface appeared in his mind. The interface was grayish-white with only a few words on it. The God of War system will be activated after entering the Taichu continent. What the hell is the Taichu continent? Could it be? And Lin thought of the recommendation letter from the immortal. He opened the golden piece of paper in his hand expectantly. Then, he discovered that there was nothing on the golden piece of paper except for a slightly indented handprint. And Lin was a little confused, but he still placed his hand on the paper and overlapped it with the handprint. Suddenly, the paper glowed with a golden light. And Lin only had time to let out a cry of surprise before his body was completely engulfed by the golden light. Ah! And Lin felt the world spin around him, and his vision turned from pitch black to bright again. Then he discovered that his body had appeared in the sky again and was beginning to fall. And Lin experienced the feeling of jumping off a building again. No matter how many times he experienced it, he wanted to cry. Boom! He crashed heavily onto the ground. Fortunately, his body was still enveloped by the golden light, which acted as a buffer and saved his life. Is this a teleportation technique? That's too violent. And Lin complained unhappily as he lay on the ground. He raised his head with difficulty, wanting to see where he was. Then, he saw a scene that he would never forget for the rest of his life. Two white, dragon-engraved pillars stood in the sky, and the plaque was engraved with mysterious characters that he couldn't understand. Behind the gate, there were thousands of palaces with no end in sight. Colorful clouds floated around the palaces, and all kinds of spirit beasts soared between heaven and earth. It was a grand and magnificent immortal atmosphere, and Lin stood rooted to the spot with shock etched on his face. So, there really is an immortal realm in this world. Have I arrived at an immortal realm? And Lin tried to calm himself down. After a while, he saw a woman in a Taoist robe walking over. He hurriedly went up to greet her and understand the situation. Hello, fairy sister. And Lin waved at the woman. The beautiful woman made her way over to Lin upon seeing him waving at her. And Lin saw this and asked excitedly, Beautiful fairy sister, may I ask where this place is? I'm new here and don't know much about this place. Hearing Lin's words, the woman's expression was a little strange. Then, she said, Blabber, blabber. What did you say? And Lin was a little confused. The woman revealed the same expression as Lin and said, Blabber, 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 bli. And Lin was dumbstruck. What the hell was she talking about? A terrifying conjecture gradually appeared in his mind. Fairy sister, do you know how to speak Mandarin? And Lin's eyes were a little wet. Blabber, 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 blabber. The beautiful woman put her hands on her hips and was a little angry. Oh no, there's a language barrier. What is she saying? I don't understand at all. And Lin was completely dumbfounded this time. He stood on the spot with his eyes glazed over, and there was only one thought in his mind. What? This is different from the novels. Shouldn't the entire world be speaking Mandarin? In the end, Lin cried. How can I cultivate if I can't even understand a language? Others start as trash, but I start as a retard. Chapter 2. Just as Lin was in despair, the system interface suddenly appeared in his mind. Detected that the host has entered the Tai Chu continent. Language system loading, and Lin was overjoyed to see this. The language barrier problem was finally solved. A moment later, the system notification appeared again. Language loading failed. Please use a voice no lower than 70 decibels to bark woof woof twice like a dog. And Lin, can someone tell me what the hell is going on? Why do I have to bark like a dog? What's the point? And Lin roared in his mind, but there was no response from the system interface. Woof woof. And Lin said in a low voice with a humiliated expression. A moment later, the system notification appeared again. Detected that the host's voice is 20 decibels. Insufficient volume, unable to load. And Lin, the goddess looked at Lin strangely. She seemed to have heard Lin make a strange sound then. The beautiful woman continued to speak in a language that he couldn't understand. Her gaze toward him also gradually changed. That's right. She was now looking at Lin as if he was a lunatic. And Lin couldn't take it anymore. He decided to throw caution to the wind and shouted, Woof! Woof! His voice was so loud that several passers-by turned to look at him in bewilderment. The woman in front of Lin was even more shocked. Are you crazy? The woman shouted in shock. Huh, as expected, I've been mistaken for a crazy person. And Lin smiled bitterly. Wait, I can understand you now. And Lin came to his senses. Almost instinctively, a strange language came out of his mouth. The woman covered her mouth and chuckled. Ah, so you can speak human language. When you suddenly said, woof woof, I almost thought you were a dog demon. And Lin blushed and hurriedly changed the topic. Hello, my name is Lin. This is my first time here. May I ask where this place is? The woman was a little surprised. You don't even know where this is. How did you get here? Actually, an expert used a special method to directly transport me here. I don't know anything about this place. And Lin explained. Oh, I see. This land is the territory of the Celestial Court. The woman pointed to the palace complex behind the gate and said, the territory behind this gate is the campus of Xiaoxian United University. I thought you were also a freshman here. Wow, you're saying that the vast territory inside the gate is all United University's campus. And Lin was shocked. He looked into the distance and saw endless buildings behind the gate. It was so vast that one couldn't see the end of it. Is that strange? By the way, what are you doing here? The woman asked curiously. Actually, you guessed correctly. I am indeed a new student here. As he spoke, and Lin passed the golden paper in his hand to the woman. A true deity's recommendation letter. The woman cried out in alarm. Then the way she looked at Lin instantly changed. The woman revealed a mesmerizing smile and introduced herself to Lin. Hello, my name is Su Xiaolan, and I come from the Stone Dragon State. I'm also a new student of this cohort. Since you're not familiar with this place, I'll take you to register. Before Lin could say anything, Su Xiaolan grabbed his hand and walked toward the gate. Lin was overwhelmed by the favor. Why did this beautiful woman's attitude become so good? Xiaoxian United University is managed by the Celestial Court. It is the #1 cultivation institution in the Kingdom of the 9 States. The entire campus covers an area of 40,000 square kilometers. Su Xiaolan introduced the university to Lin as they walked. Lin had a yearning expression on his face. This university alone was larger than the entire Taiwan province. After entering the campus, what surprised him the most was not the peculiar immortal buildings, but the people he encountered along the way. Not only were they dressed differently, but their skin colors were also varied. Lin even saw a man with tentacles and a snail shell on his back as he walked. In comparison, Su Xiaolan, who was wearing a Taoist robe, was the most normal person. The way some students walked was also very interesting. Some of them floated as they walked, while others flew in the sky on their magic treasures. All of these seemed acceptable. But what about the person who was riding the tornado and moving around? It's fine if you're riding on the tornado, but why do you have to move in circles with the wind as well? Seeing this, Lin couldn't help but laugh out loud. Unexpectedly, the person riding on the tornado was extremely sensitive to laughter. After discovering that Lin was laughing at him, he glared at Lin. Then, Lin didn't dare to laugh anymore. He forcefully endured the angry glare until he floated into the distance. The registration area is up ahead. Su Xiaolan pointed to the area where the crowd was gathered. It was a small plaza. Although it wasn't very big, there were at least 1,000 people gathered there. A huge black stone slab stood in the middle of the crowd, emitting a white light from time to time. Doubt Body, 7th stage. Wow, that's amazing, the crowd surged. And Lin's face darkened. What's with this kind of test déjà vu? This is the cultivation test before entering the school. Although we have already received the admission notice. Although we've already received our acceptance letters. The level of your cultivation determines which class you'll be educated in, Su Xiaolan explained. Su Xiaolan continued, there are about 10,000 new students this year, and they'll be divided into 100 classes. The first class to the 100th class will be divided in descending order of cultivation. On Lin's side, what a simple and crude class division policy. Su Xiaolan smiled faintly. It's convenient to teach students according to their aptitude. Moreover, and Lin, you look like a genius at first glance, so you'll definitely be assigned to the first class. And Lin really didn't know how to respond to this. He didn't even know what the Tao body was, so he'll definitely be assigned to the 100th class. And Lin and Su Xiaolan squeezed through the crowd and arrived at the registration area. Su Xiaolan took out the white acceptance letter and handed it to a middle-aged man with an extraordinary temperament. He had an immortal sword hanging from his waist. Then she walked to the huge black stone slab and pressed her hand on it. A dazzling white light shone out, and huge words appeared on the slab. Tao body, 9th stage. What a genius! She's already reached the 9th stage Tao body at such a young age. The crowd exclaimed. Everyone stared in astonishment at the beautiful girl in the Taoist robe. There was envy in their eyes. The middle-aged man with the immortal sword announced loudly, Su Xiaolan, the first class. Under everyone's gaze, Su Xiaolan walked to Enlin's side. She smiled and said, Enlin, it's your turn. Good luck. Enlin was a bit nervous. He walked up and handed the golden paper to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man received the golden paper from Enlin, and a look of surprise appeared on his calm face. He hurriedly used his magic power to activate the golden paper. Under the activation of his magic power, the golden paper emitted a faint golden light. The middle-aged man turned his gaze toward Enlin, and a faint smile actually appeared on his face. He said to Enlin in a gentle voice, Go, and test your cultivation. It's a true God's letter of recommendation. A sharp-eyed new student exclaimed after seeing the golden paper. This sentence caused the spectating new students to become excited. I wonder which tribe's prodigy he is. He actually has a true God's letter of recommendation. Come to think of it, he's already the 3rd new student to have a true God's letter of recommendation in our cohort. Yeah, there wasn't even one in the previous cohort. Who would have thought that there would be 3 in our cohort? Everyone was discussing spiritedly among themselves, and almost all of them turned their scorching gazes toward Enlin. Some young girls blushed when they saw Enlin's handsome appearance, and their hearts were stirred. T. Why are they all looking at me? Enlin's heart was filled with uneasiness as he felt her scorching gaze. Why does everyone have such high expectations of me? Enlin felt as if he were caught between a rock and a hard place. Who cares? Maybe I'm a 10th stage Tao body. With this thought, Enlin's heart finally calmed down. That's right, maybe I'm really awesome. I just haven't realized it yet. Enlin placed his hand on the huge black boulder. A white light flashed, and his hand also began to tremble. He was both nervous and expectant. Gigantic words appeared on the huge black boulder. Tao body, 0th stage. The crowd suddenly quieted down, and everyone stared blankly at the words on the boulder. Some people even rubbed their eyes, wondering if they had seen it wrong. Enlin was momentarily speechless, even though he had mentally prepared himself. However, when this reality suddenly appeared in front of him, he still felt quite disappointed. What he feared the most was the sudden silence in the air. Enlin looked at the spectating new students who were even more shocked than he was, and he really didn't know what to say. Enlin, Class 1. The middle-aged man with a sword announced loudly. Enlin stumbled as he walked, and he turned around to look at the middle-aged man. There was a look of disbelief in his eyes, and he wondered if he had heard wrongly. Then, he looked toward the new students and discovered that they were also looking at him, and the expressions in their eyes were indescribably complicated. The air suddenly became silent again. The strongest backdoor entrant of this cohort has been born. Right at this moment, someone in the crowd said this sentence. No one refuted it, and many people even nodded silently in agreement. They all knew that the name Enlin would spread throughout the entire Xiaoxian United University. After all, Enlin was the only one in history to enter the best class with the worst grades in the cohort. Enlin's mouth twitched when he heard this, and he lowered his head and walked to Su Xiaolan's side. There was a look of sympathy in Su Xiaolan's eyes. She opened her red lips slightly, and she wanted to say something to comfort him, but she didn't know where to start. Enlin looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, and there was a look of melancholy on his face. He only wanted to cultivate in peace. Why did he become an influential figure as soon as he entered the university? Moreover, he was the most unpopular type. Chapter 3. After the registration, Lin arrived at the residence he was assigned to. This time, he was truly amazed once more. As expected of the #1 cultivation academy in the Kingdom of the Nine States, the benefits are amazing. Every new student is assigned a 2-story house. The house was made of wood, and it was furnished with all kinds of furniture. Of course, computers, televisions, air conditioners, washing machines, and the like were out of the question. Most of the furniture was made of wood, and Lin felt like this was quite consistent with the scenes depicted in the cultivation novels he had read back on Earth. Even though there wasn't any modern furniture, he was still very happy to have a private villa as soon as he entered the academy. The houses were divided according to the class, and Su Xiaolan's house was right next to Lin's. As the saying goes, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. And Lin was secretly happy when he found out about this. After all, Su Xiaolan was kind, passionate, and extremely beautiful. She didn't mind the fact that he was a loser at all. Where else could he find such a good companion? I have the God of War system and am destined to dominate the cultivation world. Su Xiaolan, I will prove myself and make you look at me in a different light. A flame ignited in Lin's eyes, and a sense of heroism rose from his heart. So what if I have the Zeroth stage Dao body? Even Xiao Yin can become a Dou Di. So why can't I become an immortal emperor? Thinking of this, the corners of Lin's mouth curled up slightly, and he looked extremely confident. He sat on his bed and opened the God of War system in his mind, beginning his heaven-defying journey of cultivation. The interface of the God of War system was extremely simple. There were 3 main sections: realm, cultivation methods, and techniques. There was also a strange section called special missions. The cultivation methods, techniques, and special missions section was completely gray. The cultivation methods and techniques section indicated that he could only cultivate them after reaching the 7th stage Dao body. And Lin looked a bit helpless and turned his gaze to the realm section. 1st stage Dao body condition, 10 push-ups. Oh my God. And Lin's mouth gaped open in disbelief. Is this mission a freebie? He stammered. And Lin doubtfully did 10 push-ups on the bed. Immediately after, a cracking sound came from his bones, and the muscles all over his body suddenly became extremely painful. After a while, he stood up, panting heavily and sweating all over. I have become stronger, and Lin could feel that the power in his body had indeed changed. He had never felt so full of energy before. Furthermore, there was a type of qi that he could also sense. It was the qi that drifted between heaven and earth. Is this Yuan qi? How wonderful! And Lin knew that from now on, he had officially become a cultivator. Suppressing his pounding heart, he continued to check the War God UI. 2nd stage Dao body condition. Complete 10 plus 10 push-ups. Is this a joke? Although Lin said so, his whole body was laughing. *T, at this rate, I'll be #1 in the United Academy of Cultivation tomorrow. And Lin let out a laugh that he thought was very domineering, but was actually very vulgar. After completing 20 push-ups, Lin was drenched in sweat. He felt that he had become stronger again. He clenched his fists and suddenly smashed the table beside him. Immediately after, the entire table was smashed by Lin's fist. Haha, I'm invincible. As expected of the War God UI, I love you to death. And Lin laughed heartily. He continued to check the system and discovered that the contents had become 3rd stage Dao body condition, complete 10 times 10 push-ups. The difficulty has increased a bit, and Lin now did push-ups with a smile on his face. Soon after, he completed 100 push-ups, and his realm had also increased to the 3rd stage Dao body. As expected, this system is a cheat. If others find out that I increase my realm like this, they'll be furious. And Lin felt that he could soon reach the pinnacle of his life. He happily opened the system interface and looked at the requirements for the next realm. When he saw that it was still push-ups, he was so happy that he was about to jump up and down. 4th stage Dao body condition. Complete 10 to the power of 10 push-ups. Complete 10 to the power of 10 push-ups? and Lin was stunned for a whole 10 seconds. Let me see, how many push-ups are 10 to the power of 10 again? After a while, I've calculated it. Complete 10 to the power of 10 equals 10 billion, which means 10 billion push-ups. I could do 100,000 push-ups in a day if I give it my all. If that's the case, I'll have to do it for 270 years. And Lin's eyes were glazed over. He sat on the bed like a fool, as if he had lost all his faith. He opened the War God system and discovered that apart from the cultivation interface, all the other interfaces were gray. Does this mean that I can only rank up by doing push-ups for 200 years? No, before that. I won't be able to live to 200 years. Tears welled up in Lin's eyes. What kind of system is this? Isn't this forcing me into a dead end? Just as Lin was about to lose all hope, he suddenly realized something. No, I don't have to rely on the system to cultivate. I can cultivate on my own. And Lin had been scared **less by the system's frightening requirements. Only now did he realize that the system's requirements would change every time he advanced to the next rank. In other words, if he relied on his own abilities to rank up, the system's requirements would change. Perhaps the next mission would be much easier. And Lin sighed. That should be the case. Otherwise, what's the point of this system? However, here comes the problem again. How should I cultivate? Dong, dong, dong. And Lin knocked on the wooden door with unease in his heart. The wooden door opened, and a lithe and graceful figure appeared before Lin's eyes. The woman's long black hair draped over her shoulders. She seemed to have just taken a shower, as there were still some water droplets on her hair. In the instant that the door opened, Lin was greeted by a faint, fragrant scent. Lin, why are you here? The woman obviously didn't expect Lin to look for her at this time. Her tone was filled with surprise. Lin smiled a bit embarrassedly. Su Xiaolan, I'm sorry to disturb you so late at night. I actually have something very important to talk to you about. Oh, what is it? Is it a secret? Do you want to come into my room and talk in secret? Su Xiaolan's spirited eyes were filled with anticipation. She was obviously quite interested in the something very important that Lin mentioned. No need. Out of modesty, Lin instinctively waved his hands and refused. However, he regretted it in the next second. How could he still be modesty at this time? A girl took the initiative to invite you into her room, and you actually refused? Sigh. And Lin couldn't help but sigh. What's wrong? Su Xiaolan saw that Lin's expression suddenly became very disappointed. She then thought of the scene when he signed up and tested his cultivation base. This made her sympathize with Lin. She immediately said, "Come in and talk slowly. If I can help, I will try my best to help." Okay. And Lin felt disappointed that he had missed a good opportunity. He didn't expect that Su Xiaolan would once again throw an olive branch to him. This time, he learned his lesson. After a moment of shock, he immediately agreed. After entering the room, Su Xiaolan brewed a pot of tea for Lin. Lin didn't know the name of this tea, but just the fragrance of the tea that floated out of the teapot made him feel relaxed and happy. The two sat down facing the table, sipped the tea, and then began to talk about business. Well, now you can tell me about that very important thing of yours. Su Xiaolan's behavior was elegant. Her delicate hands lifted the teacup, her cherry lips opened slightly, and she took a small sip of tea. Yes. And Lin nodded with a dignified expression and looked at Su Xiaolan. For some reason, the atmosphere had become quite tense, and Su Xiaolan's heart also began to race slightly. And Lin said, "I have now encountered a bottleneck." Su Xiaolan nodded solemnly and gestured for Lin to continue. That is, I don't know how to cultivate it all. Can you teach me? The tea that Su Xiaolan had just drunk sprayed all over Lin's face. Chapter 4. And Lin wiped the tea off his face helplessly. After that, under Lin's extremely serious and sincere gaze, Su Xiaolan finally reluctantly accepted the fact that Lin didn't even know how to cultivate. Su Xiaolan pondered for a moment before retrieving a cultivation technique manual from her storage ring that taught one how to cultivate. This is the cultivation technique book I read when I was 3 years old. Here, I'll give it to you. After saying that, Su Xiaolan generously tossed the cultivation technique book to Lin. Lin, It was a quiet night with a sea of stars in the sky. The house was brightly lit, and Lin earnestly flipped through the cultivation technique book while Su Xiaolan patiently answered all of his questions. Cultivation was like a new world for Lin. Every single theory was unfamiliar to him. For example, which meridian should he guide the spiritual energy of heaven and earth through when he breathed? How to circulate the cultivation technique? What kind of rules should he follow when guiding the spiritual energy of heaven and earth? And Lin listened very seriously and asked very enthusiastically. He even took notes from time to time. As for Su Xiaolan, she was the prodigy of the Stone Dragon state. Teaching in Lin cultivation was no easier than teaching a gorilla cultivation. Heavens, he couldn't even differentiate the meridians in his body. How'd he live to 18 years old? He didn't even know how to circulate his spiritual energy. Even if he hadn't eaten pork, he should at least have seen a pig run. Su Xiaolan was on the verge of breaking down. She explained some of the most basic knowledge to Lin word by word, while gesturing with her hands from time to time. Lin, on the other hand, was dumbstruck. This night was a memorable and painful night for the two of them. After a long, long time, Lin walked out of Su Xiaolan's door with a heart full of gratitude. Su Xiaolan thanked the heavens and sent off Lin, the great Buddha. In any case, Lin had gained a lot tonight because he had finally learned how to cultivate and how to breathe the qi of heaven and earth. As soon as he returned to his room, he couldn't wait to start meditating. In the process of meditation, he could feel that he was slowly becoming stronger. Although the extent was not great, it gave him hope. Sigh, the path from trash to prodigy is indeed filled with obstacles. And Lin couldn't help but sigh as he meditated in his room. The next day, Lin's studies at Xiaoxin United University officially began. Xiaoxin United University was founded by the Celestial Court to train cultivators. Countless prodigies from the Kingdom of the Nine States were gathered here. Most of the students who were able to enter this school were the cream of the crop in the cultivation world. And in this school, the most impressive students were the students of Class 1. They were the prodigies among prodigies. Most of the rising stars in the immortal cultivation world would come from this Class 1. In the Kingdom of the Nine States, the vast majority of cultivators would remain at the 5th stage Tao body for their entire lives. And in Class 1, the lowest rank was the 8th stage Tao body. Of course, Lin was an exception. To be honest, Lin was under a lot of pressure being in the same class as this group of prodigies. The school building where his classes were held was constructed from high-grade, white jade spirit stones. A rich, vital energy filled the entire space. And because of this, the cultivation bases of the students could subtly increase when they attended classes in the school building. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a spell formation in the school building that prevented the students from forcefully absorbing the vital energy within the spirit stones, the school building would probably have collapsed the next day. And Lin stepped into the door of his class with an uneasy heart. The geniuses looking down on him scenario that he had anticipated did not play out here. Although the prodigies in this class would all look at him, most of them looked at him with curiosity in their eyes. The reputation of the strongest backdoor entrant, Lin, had spread throughout the entire school on the first day of registration. But fortunately, he wasn't the most popular among this year's new students. He could only be said to be ranked 3rd. Who were the other two? He learned from Su Xiaolan that these two people were also people who had true God's recommendation letters. From the past enrollment records of Xiaoxin United University, there might not even be a single new student who had a true God's recommendation letters in a year. From this, it could be seen how rare these true God's recommendation letters were. Rather than saying that the true God's recommendation letters were a letter of acceptance, it was more like proof of a new student's strength. That was the recognition of the supreme, true God in the immortal cultivation world. It was a great honor. It could be said that the new students who had received the true God's recommendation letters were all extremely monstrous. In this year's batch, the other two people who had received the true God's recommendation letters were the monstrous prodigies that Su Xiaolan mentioned. Xianyuan Sheng, spirit nurturing initial stage, son of the sect leader of the 10,000 spirits immortal sect of the Wind Plain state. Su Qianyun, spirit nurturing initial stage, princess of the green wood imperial family of the purple star state. She was rumored to be a Tao fanatic. After breaking through to the 10th stage Tao body, one would reach the spirit nurturing stage. Just how difficult was it to reach the spirit nurturing stage? And Lin had heard that most of the prodigies in Class 1 couldn't even reach the spirit nurturing stage after spending 5 years in school and graduating. Once they reached the spirit nurturing stage, they could be listed on the immortal register in the celestial court and were known as little immortals. These two people had a cultivation base that was enough to be listed on the immortal register as soon as they entered the school. This matter caused quite a stir in the entire Xiaoxian United University. And Lin, like them, had also received the True God's recommendation letters to enter the school. He didn't know why, but he felt really ashamed right now. He really wanted to find a hole and crawl into it. The prodigies of Class 1 were obviously more interested in Xianyuan Cheng and Su Qianyun. Although they wouldn't ridicule Lin, they wouldn't pay too much attention to him either. This situation made Lin heave a long sigh of relief. He felt much more relaxed. A harmonious society was the most important thing, after all. He sat at the back and silently flipped through the breathing technique that Su Xiaolan had given him. Soon, a burst of exclamations came from the classroom. Even with his eyes closed, Lin knew that the person who had walked in was either Xianyuan Cheng or Su Qianyun. Sure enough, a woman slowly walked in. She wore a starry robe and had a head of waist-length black hair. There was a dreamy look in her bright blue eyes. The moment Lin saw her, he couldn't take his eyes off her. She was so beautiful that even Lin felt that describing her as devastatingly beautiful would be belittling her. In short, the top campus belle of Xiaoxian United University would probably be hers from now on. Facing the envious gazes of the entire class, Su Qianyun looked indifferent. She walked to a corner of the classroom, sat down, and began to close her eyes to rest. God is so unfair. It's fine that he's so talented, but why does he also look so beautiful? Su Xiaolan raised her eyebrows and snorted. What's wrong? Jealous? And Lin saw Su Xiaolan's expression and found it a little funny. Go read your book, idiot. Su Xiaolan snapped. Another burst of exclamations came from the classroom, mixed with the screams of some female students. A man stepped through the door. His eyebrows were like stars, his eyes were like swords, and his face was like jade. He walked with an elegant demeanor, and a gentle smile hung on his face. The man was the son of the sect leader of the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Sect, Xianyuan Cheng. He attracted everyone's attention as soon as he walked in. In this regard, he behaved very naturally and politely smiled and nodded at the group of students, greeting them. Then, he chose a seat near the front and sat down. And Lin had to admit that he was quite handsome. However, in the face of Xianyuan Cheng's radiance, he had no choice but to admit that he was slightly inferior to him. This time, it was Su Xiaolan's turn to be unable to take her eyes off him. Even after Xianyuan Cheng turned around and sat down, she was still staring at Xianyuan Cheng's back with deep emotions. And Lin looked at Xianyuan Cheng and sighed with a sorrowful expression. Sigh, I hate people like him the most in my life. They can make a living with their looks, their talent, and their dad. Chapter 5. The first class was Immortal Spells, taught by Dioscoria Cancongensis. In the class, Dioscoria Cancongensis lectured in high spirits on the podium. He even demonstrated a few profound immortal spells when he got to the point. The students below the stage listened with great interest and benefited a lot from it. Of course, and Lin was an exception. He listened to Dioscoria Cancongensis' serious teaching as if he was listening to a book from heaven. It was not that he was not paying attention, but he could not understand at all. Taking Earth as an example, and Lin felt like this. He had just graduated from elementary school and was then sent to the most awesome university in the country, Huaqin University, where he listened to a professor excitedly lecturing about advanced mathematics, and Lin could understand every word that Dioscoria Cancongensis said. But when they were connected into a sentence, he had no idea what it meant. As everyone knows, the Yang Meridian is connected to the Green Vine route. Activate the 9 Revolutions Qi Condensation Array to gather vital energy. and you can reach Tian Yuan. You can also use the nether ring technique to complement it. Combined with the density of vital energy in the sky and operate according to the Tianhua formula, it can save the casting time of the flame technique. Dioscorea Kankangensis said slowly. The students nodded in realization. Enlin, as a good-for-nothing, Enlin actually had the dream of studying hard and then using his amazing intelligence to crush the geniuses. Finally, he could make a perfect comeback as a good-for-nothing. But reality was cruel. He, who had zero cultivation foundation, could only stare blankly in class. Although Dioscorea Kankangensis spoke in simple terms and vividly. But that only applied to the geniuses in Class 1 who had a solid foundation in immortal spells. For a cultivation idiot like Enlin with zero foundation, Taoist Songqing was like a heavenly book. Under the strong effect of the Songqing brand sleeping pill, Enlin began to feel drowsy. In the end, he fell asleep involuntarily, and so Enlin had a dream. He dreamt that he had become an invincible god of war, and countless beautiful fairies adored him. Xin Yuan Sheng had become his underling, and he kept referring to him as Big Brother, and Su Qianyun even had a crush on him. Every time they met, she would give him 99 roses to express her love. However, Enlin could not accept her love because he was shouldering the heavy responsibility of protecting this world, so he could only put his personal feelings aside. As a result, the realm of devils has begun to invade our kingdom of the 9 states again. The Lord of the demonic realm was so powerful that all the immortals in the celestial court turned pale. None of them dared to fight him. At this moment, the god of war, Enlin, stood out. Ha 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 ha! You're the #1 warrior of the celestial court, the invincible, true god Enlin. The Lord of the demonic realm's voice was as loud as a bell, resounding through the 9 heavens. That's right. It's me, Lord of the demonic realm. Hand over your life. Enlin roared angrily and collided with the Lord of the demonic realm. This battle was earth-shattering. The Lord of the demonic realm wailed, "You're so strong, but why are you sleep-talking in class? What are you talking about? I'm protecting this world." Enlin did not know why the Lord of the demonic realm was speaking so incoherently. The Lord of the demonic realm was enraged. "Wake up, or I'll throw you out of the classroom." Enlin was also enraged. "Cut the crap, eat my fist." Enlin punched out, but the Lord of the demonic realm's fist was bigger and stronger. The fist smashed into Enlin's head, causing excruciating pain. Enlin cried out in pain as the world spun around him. "What hurts?" Enlin shouted loudly. His vision went black, and he slowly woke up. So it was a dream. Enlin was shocked and broke out in cold sweat. He opened his eyes with some difficulty and found that the whole class was looking at him strangely. Some of them could not help but laugh out loud. He touched the big bump on his head and suddenly felt something was wrong. Enlin raised his head to find a beautiful and alluring woman standing beside him. She held a lesson plan in her hand and was glaring angrily at him. Shouldn't you be a middle-aged uncle? How did you become a beautiful big sister?" Enlin was still dizzy and casually complained. As soon as he said this, the classroom burst into laughter again. Su Xiaolan, who was sitting next to Enlin, held her forehead and turned her face to the side. She did not want others to know that she knew Enlin. "Oh, this little brother has a sweet mouth." The woman looked at Enlin with a smile that was not a smile. Enlin was startled. He woke up at this time and realized that he had said something wrong. Before he could even open his mouth to apologize, his head suffered another heavy blow. Enlin saw stars, and a wave of dizziness washed over him as a second bump appeared on his head. "Remember, if you sleep talk in class next time, I will throw you out of the classroom," the beautiful and sexy woman said fiercely. A terrifying power suddenly emitted from her body and enveloped Enlin, causing his body to tremble. "Teacher, I swear, I won't do it next time." Enlin nodded like a chick pecking at rice. This small interlude in the classroom soon subsided. The female lecturer continued her lesson. The students quickly returned to their normal state and began to listen carefully. Hey, Su Xiaolan, what happened just now?" Enlin whispered to Su Xiaolan. If she could, Su Xiaolan really did not want to talk to Enlin at this time. However, Enlin's pair of big eyes looked at her pitifully. She was really helpless and could only say, "Do you know how many classes you slept in?" "2," Enlin said with some uncertainty. The lecturer changed from the middle-aged man, Dioscoria Cancongensis, to the beautiful woman on the podium. He thought that he had slept in 2 classes. "No, you slept in almost 4 classes. This is the last one," Su Xiaolan said snappily. "My God," Enlin whispered in surprise. "I can actually sleep for the whole morning. How much sleep do I have?" Enlin guessed that this should be because he meditated for too long last night, causing his body to be too tired. "It's fine if you sleep quietly. The teacher won't care about you. But you actually talked in your sleep in class, and your voice was quite loud. Anyway, most of the students heard your wonderful speech." Su Xiaolan looked at Enlin with some sympathy and said softly, "Enlin had a bad premonition." "What did I say?" Su Xiaolan placed her hands on her cheeks and burst into laughter as if she had thought of something. After laughing for a while, she began to imitate the tone of Enlin and the female teacher and began to repeat, "Lord of the demon world, give me your life. Who the hell is this student? He actually dares to talk in his sleep in class. What are you saying? I am protecting this world. Quickly wake up. If you don't wake up, I will throw you out of this classroom. Less nonsense. Take my punch first." That's what happened. After this classic dialogue, you were beaten up. Su Xiaolan squinted her eyes, her eyebrows curved. After seeing the 2 big bumps on Enlin's head, in order to not let him feel too hurt, she forcefully held back her laughter. Enlin finally knew how miserable he was. He sat on the chair in a daze. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He felt that right now, the word ruined was the most suitable to describe him. He talked in his sleep in front of all the geniuses in the class. One embarrassing scene. Sleep talking was one thing, but the key thing was that he said such a stupid line. Sigh, he had lost all his face. Enlin covered his face. He was now very shocked and wanted to find a hole to hide in. Chapter 6. The afternoon class still made Enlin sleepy, but after experiencing the disturbance in class in the morning, he didn't have the guts to sleep in class. For Enlin, the only interesting thing in the afternoon was the class monitor election. This election was hosted by their homeroom teacher, Flying Sword God. He was also the head of the freshmen. He looked fresh and handsome, and instantly attracted many fangirls in the class. The position of class monitor was elected by democratic voting. Those who wanted to run for the position could directly go to the podium to canvass for votes. Xin Yuanqing's election speech was simple and crude. He only had one sentence. "Everyone here is the strongest among this batch of freshmen, so your class monitor must also be the strongest among this batch, because only then can he be worthy of this position." Xin Yuanqing praised his classmates and himself. It had to be said that it was very effective. In the end, after a period of competition, and Su Qinyun didn't participate in the election, Xin Yuanqing won the position of class monitor with an absolute advantage of votes. After school, the newly appointed class monitor, Xin Yuanqing, came to Enlin's side. "Is he going to make a move on me so soon?" Enlin's heart jolted with shock. A new officer makes 3 moves. It seemed that Xin Yuanqing was finally starting to put on a show of strength to the unusual ones in his class. "This class doesn't allow trash to exist," Xin Yuanqing said calmly. Sure enough, after hearing this sentence, before Enlin could react, his anger was dispelled by Xin Yuanqing's next sentence. "So, classmate Enlin, you have to work hard. If you encounter any problems in cultivation, you can tell me. As the class monitor, I will do my best to help you." After saying that, Xin Yuanqing showed a refreshing smile to Enlin. He even patted his shoulder to show encouragement, then turned around and left. Enlin looked at Xin Yuanqing's back as he left, unable to come back to his senses. It turns out that I met a good class leader. At night, Enlin continued to meditate and cultivate. He could feel his cultivation increasing bit by bit. But because he didn't have a specific reference, he didn't know how fast his cultivation was. Sigh. I hope I can use my own strength to break through to the 4th stage Tao body as soon as possible. and Lin knew that raising his cultivation level could not be rushed. The more impatient he was, the worse the effects of raising his cultivation level would be. The next day, Lin, who wanted to cultivate peacefully, encountered trouble again. A student from another class handed a letter to Lin. There were 2 large words on the envelope. Challenge. Seeing these 2 big words, Lin's heart suddenly jumped. What kind of joke is this? Who did I provoke? How dare they issue a challenge to me? Lin opened the envelope uneasily and read its contents. I've heard that Lin has a high cultivation level and is one of the 3 prodigies who received a true God's letter of recommendation. I'm the class leader of Class 1, Lou DeBeo. May I be so bold as to challenge you to a duel in front of the flower bed of the school building after school. The tone of the letter was normal at the beginning, but the last few sentences were completely different. Whoever doesn't show up for this duel is a coward without a penis. I've already spread the news of our duel to all the classes. There will be many students coming to watch the duel. I believe you won't stand us up, right? Then, let's meet after school. Preposterous. Lin almost cursed out loud when he read the end of the letter. How could Lin not know what Lou DeBeo was planning? He had just become the class leader of Class 1. If he defeated a new student from Class 1, it would be very impressive. Apart from Lin, any one of the students in Class 1 would be able to beat Lou DeBeo to the ground with a single finger. Lin was different. His cultivation level was very low, but he was an influential figure among the new students. Therefore, Lou DeBeo cleverly chose Lin as his opponent. This way, he could not only strengthen his reputation, but also easily resolve the duel. In the letter, he kept praising how powerful Lin was. If he defeated Lin in the duel, it would make him seem even more powerful. The most hateful thing was that he also spread the news of the duel to all the classes. With so many people watching, if Lin didn't accept the duel, it would be really embarrassing. If Lin were to go and be defeated in front of everyone, it would be quite a humiliation for him. This was really too infuriating. For the sake of fame, he would really do anything. Although he had never seen what Lou DeBeo looked like, Lin had already cursed all of his ancestors. What's wrong? Why are you so angry all of a sudden? Su Xiaolan asked curiously when she saw Lin's angry expression. Let me ask you, do you know the class leader of Class 1, Lou DeBeo? Lin asked in a low voice. Oh, the class leader of the gilded class. How could I know that kind of trash? Su Xiaolan didn't realize that her words had deeply hurt Lin. Lin suppressed his sadness and asked in confusion, why is Class 1 called the gilded class? As the name suggests, the students of that class come to Xiaoxian United University to get gilded. Although our university has gathered most of the prodigies in the Kingdom of the 9 States, there are also some trash that came in through the back door. They come here purely to get a graduation certificate so that they can brag to others that they are also talented students, Su Xiaolan said nonchalantly. Hearing this, Lin's heart was lit up with hope. Then how high is the cultivation base of their class leader? That's hard to say. The class leader of the gilded class probably doesn't become the class leader based on his cultivation base. It's probably whoever has a strong background. I'm guessing his cultivation base should be around the 4th or 2nd stage Dao body. Our university probably won't accept people who can't cultivate at all, Su Xiaolan replied. Lin grimaced. So this is a duel between the most powerful backdoor entrant of Xiaoxian United University and the most powerful backdoor entrant of Class 1? By the way, why are you asking this? Su Xiaolan asked curiously. After learning about Lou DeBeo's approximate cultivation base, Lin was filled with heroic spirit, and a surging battle intent ignited in his heart. Su Xiaolan, don't leave after school. Watch as I trample the class leader of Class 1 under my feet. Time passed by quickly. Before he knew it, Lin had finally arrived at the moment to prove himself. 2 people stood in an empty space in front of the school building's parterre. Several hundred new students gathered around them. They came from all classes and came to watch out of curiosity after receiving Lou DeBeo's message. Even students from Class 1 had gathered here. However, they weren't here to cheer for Lin. They were simply bored out of their minds and came to watch the show. The protagonists of this duel were one of the 3 most influential new students, and Lin, who was known as the most powerful backdoor entrant and the class leader of Class 1, Lu DeBeo. And Lin stood on the ground with his hands behind his back, facing Lu DeBeo. His handsome face paired with his white attire made him look elegant and extraordinary. "He's in Lin? He doesn't look as bad as the rumors say," a girl whispered. She blushed when she saw Lin's appearance. A boy nodded in agreement. "In terms of temperament, he doesn't look like trash." Across from Lin, Lu DeBeo's appearance appeared a bit more ordinary. However, he also displayed the demeanor of an expert at this moment. His slightly chubby face was filled with a solemn expression. "You still came?" Lu DeBeo said coldly. "Yes, I came." And Lin nodded. His white attire fluttered even though there was no wind. "Then let's begin. Let's begin this anticipated battle," Lu DeBeo said calmly. "Okay." And Lin smiled calmly. Just like that, the battle erupted. Everyone present had witnessed a battle that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Chapter 7. And Lin and Lu DeBeo both began to attack at the same time. They moved like the wind and quickly collided with each other. The climax of the battle erupted in an instant. The two of them used their strongest power right from the start of the battle. Thump, 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 bang, bang, bang. Clatter, 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 clatter. Puff, puff, puff. After an intense battle, the two of them separated while panting and nervously confronted each other. "You're not bad." "Heh, you're not bad either." "Then let's continue." "All right." Thus, the two of them collided again, and their fists and legs intertwined. Thump, 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 bang, bang, bang. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Puff, puff, puff. Hundreds of genius freshmen from all over the land of the 9 prefectures stared dumbfoundedly at the scene of the two of them fighting hand to hand. They couldn't regain their senses for a long time. "Oh my God, what did I do wrong? Why'd they make me watch this?" A freshman said in despair. "Is he really from Class 1 with this level of skill? So the rumors about Lin are true. He really is the one with the strongest connections." A cute girl's eyes were woof woof. Seeing the handsome Lin actually use such a vulgar move, she felt that her fantasies were shattered. Su Xiaolan was filled with regret. She looked at Lin, who was fighting on the stage, and felt that her eyes had gone blind. She couldn't help but mutter, "I must be crazy to agree to come here and cheer for you." The reactions of the surrounding spectators became more and more intense. Su Xiaolan was glad that she didn't shout that sentence out loud. She wiped the cold sweat from her forehead and looked at Lin, who was in a bitter battle. She said in a low voice, "I'm sorry. I really don't have the courage to shout. Lin, do your best in front of everyone." Just as Lin and Lu DeBeo were fighting fiercely, Su Xiaolan noticed the figure of her Prince Charming, Xianyuan Cheng. She didn't expect him to also come to watch the battle. Su Xiaolan was overjoyed. She was just about to go over and say hello when she saw Xianyuan Cheng rubbing his forehead and leaving the crowd. Su Xiaolan faltered in her footsteps at the sight of Xianyuan Cheng's sullen expression. She looked at Xianyuan Cheng sympathetically and thought to herself, "Forget it. Let him calm down first." Lin and Lu DeBeo separated again. This time, both of them were injured. Lin's handsome face was already swollen, and Lu DeBeo's eyes were also beaten into panda eyes. "Your strength has exceeded my expectations. No wonder you're one of the 3 most influential figures among the new batch of freshmen. You should be proud of yourself for pushing me to this point. Now, I'm going to use my most terrifying ultimate move." Lu DeBeo was obviously angry after being beaten to this state. He shouted at Lin. For some reason, when the surrounding freshmen heard this, the sounds of discussion gradually quieted down. Clearly, they were looking forward to the ultimate move that Lu DeBeo was talking about. Lin's heart trembled. He didn't expect that Lu DeBeo still had a trick up his sleeve. This made him incomparably vigilant. Immortal technique, absorption palm. Lu DeBeo faced Lin with both hands and roared. White light burst forth from his hands. Lin suddenly felt a suction force. Immediately after, his whole body involuntarily flew towards Lu DeBeo. He actually knows immortal technique. Lin turned pale with fright and said excitedly. This was the first time he had personally experienced the power of immortal technique. He felt extremely heroic. This was a battle between immortal cultivators. When Lin's body flew close to Lou DeBeo, he took advantage of the fact that Lou DeBeo's hands couldn't move and used all his strength to punch towards Lou DeBeo's face. Bang! Lou DeBeo's face was caught off guard by Lin's punch. One of his teeth also flew into the air. Lou DeBeo fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was filled with shock. What a terrifying reaction. You're indeed a formidable opponent. But the stronger you are, the more excited I am. Because only like this can it be called a battle. After Lou DeBeo spoke his heroic words, he once again started wrestling with Lin. Thump, thump, thump. Bang, bang, bang. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Puff, puff, puff. The spectators were dumbstruck and fell into a strange silence. I want to rush up and beat the crap out of both of them, a new student said expressionlessly. Count me in. I can't hold back either. Another new student chimed in. He had already unsheathed the long sword at his waist. I'm really crazy. In order to watch their battle, I actually gave up the strawberry dessert in the canteen. If you guys go up, I'll follow too. A girl had already unsheathed her dagger and said fiercely, +1, +1, +1. Just like that, a few hundred new students watched the battle in the arena. Murderous intent surged as they all unsheathed their weapons. A wry smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she silently took a step back and prayed for Lin in her heart. Lin, please don't be beaten to death. He'll be fine if he's just a little disabled. Lin and Lou DeBeo, who were in the midst of a fierce battle, were completely unaware that their lives were already in danger. Calm down, you guys. I've already called the police. A male student said angrily. Everyone else thought that he was joking and didn't take it to heart. They were already preparing to fight. But soon, 3 men in blue robes descended from the sky atop flying swords and landed between Lin and Lou DeBeo. A divine sword landed near the two of them. Immediately afterward, a terrifying gust of wind was released from the sword, directly blowing Lin and Lou DeBeo away from each other. Someone suddenly intervened, causing the two people who were in the middle of a fierce battle to be shocked, and they both stopped fighting. At this moment, the man in the lead flashed a blue badge and said to Lin and Lou DeBeo, "We are members of the university law enforcement team. The two of you are fighting on campus without permission. This is an extremely vile act. In accordance with the relevant regulations of Xiaoxian United University, the two of you are now under arrest. Send them to the campus detention room for 3 days." Lin's expression froze, and he looked at Lou DeBeo with a puzzled expression. What was going on? The battle between the two of them was actually against the university's rules? Lou DeBeo ignored Lin. Instead, he put on a heroic expression and laughed. For the honor of Class 100, I have no regrets in this battle. It's a pity that we didn't manage to determine a winner between us. Lou DeBeo looked at Lin with some regret. Damn it, I've been tricked. Lin roared in his heart. Only now did he know that there was such a rule in the university. They had only entered the university for a few days, and they were already detained for 3 days. Why is this happening? Why is this the result? Lin and Lou DeBeo were both handcuffed and taken away by the 3 members of the university law enforcement team without any resistance. When they left, hundreds of new students applauded behind them. The applause was very enthusiastic and did not stop for a long time. Some people even had tears in their eyes. Did you hear their applause? We've proven ourselves through this battle, Lou DeBeo said to Lin beside him. There was no longer any fighting spirit in his eyes. He looked at Lin with a gentle gaze. There was an expression of appreciation between heroes. Lin smiled faintly and said with relief, "Yes, to be honest, being arrested and detained for 3 days isn't a big deal to gain their recognition." The hundreds of new students were filled with emotion. They had witnessed an incomparable battle, and this battle would leave a deep and colorful mark in their lives. Fortunately, the law enforcement team came. Otherwise, I would have really taken action. They successfully stopped a terrible battle. The university law enforcement team is very efficient. I'll give them a thumbs up. The two of them were pitiful. They had no idea that the hundreds of new students were applauding the law enforcement team who had arrived in time. Chapter 8. Lin and Ludabeo were locked up in the school's detention room. It was a dark, depressing, and humid place. There was nothing around them. That's right, there wasn't even a bed. And Lin was a little puzzled. Why was the conditions of this detention room worse than those in prison? Once he thought about how he had to sleep on this hard floor for 3 days, he couldn't help but start to cry again. The only thing that could be seen in the detention room was the wall. There were 2 big black words written on it: repent. Lin and Ludabeo were locked up in the same detention room. Inside, they also found another man and a white dog. That man was the same as Lin and Ludabeo. His face was also bruised and swollen. Even the dog was covered in injuries. It looked like it had been beaten up. "Brother, you fought with this dog?" Lin looked at the man and asked in surprise. "What a joke. Dabai and I were injured for our lofty ideals." The man, whose injuries seemed to be much more serious than Lin and Ludabeo, replied with a look of disdain. The man glanced at Lin and Ludabeo and understood. "You two were the ones who came in because of fighting, right?" Ludabeo and Lin both nodded. Then they looked at each other. Seeing the other's miserable state, both of them revealed satisfied expressions. "What a loser." The man chuckled. The white furred dog on the side also barked, as if expressing its agreement. Hearing this, Ludabeo was immediately unconvinced. He retorted, "You said you were injured for your lofty ideals. Then why are you locked up here?" "It's a long story." The man looked like he was reminiscing. Lin curiously moved to the man's side. With a face full of gossip, he said, "It's okay, it's okay. We have all the time in the world. Tell us slowly, how did you get injured? Tell us, and let us all be happy." The man glared at Lin and continued, "Do you know our school's Moon Lake?" Moon Lake? Lin hadn't been at school for long, so he was unfamiliar with this place. "I know, it's a large natural hot spring in our school. The vitality of the spring water is extremely rich, and it also has the effect of beautifying, nourishing, and nurturing the mind. But it's a pity that the school seems to have stipulated that only girls can go there. Why did you mention this?" Ludabeo wondered. Lin's eyes lit up, and he said with a smirk, "Could it be that you—" The boy smiled and nodded, his face full of emotion as he said, "The boiling pearl leaps over the bright moon. The bright mirror holds the empty sky. The cleansing air calms here. The dawn makes gurgling sounds." Ludabeo finally reacted and said agitatedly, "Stop reciting poems and speak human language. Tell me the details." Well said, well said. Listen to me carefully." The man said slowly and unhurriedly. "It's said that women are the most beautiful when they're taking a bath. A group of women taking a bath is even more beautiful. Think about it. In the Moon Lake surrounded by white mist, the jade-like skin, the bell-like laughter that plays with each other, and the little white rabbits that undulate with the spring water." And Lin and Ludabeo both swallowed their saliva as their imaginations began to run wild. The atmosphere also began to take a subtle turn. "But I heard that there are members of the school's law enforcement team patrolling the surroundings of the Moon Lake. It's as difficult as ascending to the heavens to catch a glimpse of the scenery," Ludabeo said with some regret. The man snorted coldly. "Although the school's law enforcement team is powerful, it's not a problem for me." "Oh, do you have any good ideas?" And Lin asked humbly. The man glanced at the white dog beside him proudly and said with a smile, "I'll have to rely on my right-hand man, Dabai." "Woof." Dabai wagged its tail and proudly raised its head. "There's a type of gemstone called the ice water mirror stone. It's like a mirror and can store the scene it reflects in a dynamic state inside. And I'll make this gemstone into a necklace and hang it around Dabai's neck so that it can enter the Moon Lake." An expression of shock appeared on Lin's face. "Isn't this ice water mirror stone like a video camera?" "Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Let Dabai enter the Moon Lake. I think the ladies won't be wary of a dog. This way, we can rest assured and take pictures." And Lin was full of praise. At this moment, Ludabeo also had a look of admiration for the man. He asked respectfully and excitedly, "Brother, may I ask, do you still have resources?" The man sighed and had a look of regret on his face. "I was about to succeed, but I didn't expect to be discovered by a monster called Su Qianyan from our year." "Su Qianyan?" The Su Qinyan, who was known as the #1 goddess of Xiaoxian United University the moment she enrolled? Lu Debeo asked in surprise. Yes, that's her. She was also soaking in the hot spring at that time. The man smiled bitterly. God knows how she found out that there was something wrong with Dubai. Not only did she sense the ice water mirror stone on Dubai's neck, but she also followed the chi movement of the ice water mirror stone to find my location. So, you, in Dubai, ended up like this? And Lin looked sympathetically at the man before him, who had been beaten beyond recognition, and the white dog who had been beaten beyond recognition. On the other hand, Lu Debeo didn't have much sympathy on his face. Instead, he said enviously, dying under a peony, "You could be a romantic even as a ghost. Isn't it nice to be beaten by a goddess?" The man rolled his eyes at Lu Debeo. It's fine if it's just Su Qinyan beating you up, but how does it feel to be beaten up by dozens of tigresses at the same time? I'm sure you won't feel any happiness. To tell you the truth, I almost thought that I was infertile, but I don't regret it. I haven't realized my lofty dream yet. I'll come back again, the man said firmly. Hearing this, and Lin and Lu Debeo's bodies trembled. They were both in awe, and Lin even cupped his hands and asked, "Your courage and wisdom are admirable. May I know your name?" Class 25, Zhao Huayin, the man said solemnly. Class 1, and Lin also introduced himself. Class 100, Lu Debeo. Lu Debeo said excitedly. Woof woof, Dubai said. After the 3 people and 1 dog introduced themselves, they looked at each other and smiled, as if they were sworn brothers. So you're in Lin, the one with the strongest backdoor connections in our school. I've heard a lot about you. Zhao Huayin was a little surprised. Then he looked at Lu Debeo. So you're the son of celestial immortal Yu Ding, Lu Debeo. I've heard of your name a long time ago. Nice to meet you. Big Brother Silver, it's my great fortune to have met you. Please take care of me in the future. Lu Debeo looked at Zhao Huayin with admiration and cupped his hands. Lu Debeo was actually the son of a celestial immortal. This time, it was Lin's turn to be shocked. And Lin now had some understanding of the cultivation realms of cultivators. A cultivator of the spirit-nurturing stage could be considered a minor immortal and be listed among the immortals in the celestial court. Another stage higher was the earth immortal of the soul formation stage. Only after that was the celestial immortal of the return to void stage. In the celestial court, celestial immortals had a supreme status. It could be said that if true gods didn't appear, celestial immortals were the most powerful cultivators in the celestial court. What shocked Lin was that celestial immortal Yu Ding, who was a celestial immortal, actually had a son who was almost defeated by him. This caused Lin to sink into a deep silence. Was Lu Debeo really celestial immortal Yu Ding's biological son? Just like that, after a round of self-introductions, the 3 people and 1 dog started chatting without any barriers. Within the detention room, laughter could be heard from time to time. It was a joyous scene. Chapter 9. 3 days later, Lin and Lu Debeo were finally released from the dark detention room. As for Zhao Huayin and Dubai, because they peeped on female students bathing, they were detained for 4 more days than Lin and Lu Debeo. Regarding this, Lin and Lu Debeo felt deeply regretful. They reluctantly bid farewell to the 2 warriors in the detention room, and then returned to their normal campus life of cultivation. And Lin saw the campus was bright and beautiful, hundreds of flowers in full bloom, and from time to time, a cool breeze blew, carrying with it the faint fragrance of flowers. All of this was so wonderful. He greedily breathed in the fresh air. His heart was extremely comfortable. This is freedom. And Lin sighed. Yeah, now I feel like I have a new life. Lu Debeo also sighed. And Lin, I have to go back to class to take a look. As a class monitor, I have to go back and explain to my classmates that I have been detained for 3 days. Lu Debeo said to Zhang Lin with a smile. Okay, take care. And Lin nodded. You too. Lu Debeo patted Lin's shoulder and then said goodbye. After 3 days of interaction, Lin realized that this Lu Debeo was actually not an annoying guy. Although sometimes he did things without considering the consequences, such as this challenge. But after he became familiar with Lin, he said whatever was on his mind, and he was open-minded and sincere. Because of this, Enlin and Liu de Bayo became friends through fighting. As Liu de Bayo gradually walked away, the surroundings returned to peace. Enlin looked into the distance and saw that the setting sun was about to fall into the clouds. The golden clouds floated around the campus, becoming increasingly dim. A few red-crowned cranes flew in the clouds, and from time to time, a few ethereal cries could be heard. He stood on the slope of the campus and gazed into the distance. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on his body, covering his body with a pale yellow luster, like an ancient painting. It's getting late. I think today's class is about to end. I'll go to class tomorrow. After an unknown period of time, Enlin came back to his senses and softly sighed. The United Academy of Cultivation was built on a continent that floated high up in the sky. Every time school ended, he would be able to see the beautiful sight of the sun setting into the sea of clouds. It was said that on certain special occasions, one could even see the magnificent spectacle of towering rainbow clouds on campus. However, Enlin hadn't been here for long and didn't have the luck to see such a spectacle. But even an ordinary dusk scene was unbelievably beautiful. Every time he saw it, he was shocked. As soon as he returned to his residence, Enlin immediately began to meditate and cultivate. He had never slacked off when it came to cultivation. He didn't know when he would be able to break through to the fourth stage Tao body. It could be tomorrow, it could be in 10 years, or it could be in this lifetime. Even if the road ahead was shrouded in fog, and he couldn't see how far he could go, Enlin didn't have the slightest intention of giving up. Because wasn't this world very beautiful? He wanted to see more sights that ordinary people couldn't see. He wanted to meet more interesting people, and he wanted to truly embark on the path of cultivation. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance of success, he still had to try. That night, for some reason, Enlin felt that his rank was rising slightly faster than usual when he cultivated. The next morning, Enlin knocked on Su Xiaolan's door. "Enlin, you've finally been released." Su Xiaolan opened the door and saw that it was Enlin. Her sleepy eyes immediately lit up. Enlin was the first friend Su Xiaolan met after she entered Xiaoxian United University. He was also the person she got along with the most. She really wasn't used to Enlin being locked up for a few days. "Come, let's go to class," Enlin said with a smile. "Wait a moment, I'm going to change." Before Enlin could say anything else, Su Xiaolan slammed the door shut. When Su Xiaolan finished changing and came out, Enlin was stunned. He stared blankly at her outfit. "Ew, where did you get this princess dress?" Enlin was so shocked that he started to stutter. He saw Su Xiaolan walk out gracefully in a white muslin dress. Her neck was as beautiful as a swan's, and there was a faint collarbone. The white belt further outlined her slender waist. The hem of her dress fluttered in the wind. She was like a celestial maiden from the heavens, traveling with the clouds. Su Xiaolan was extremely beautiful to begin with. Now that she was wearing a princess dress, she was even more beautiful. She was like a princess who had walked out of a painting, making one unable to take their eyes off her. But now, what Enlin was truly shocked about was not her beauty. Instead, it was the style of her dress that was clearly out of the ordinary. This princess dress was clearly a dress that only existed on Earth. How did this dress appear in the cultivation world? The sense of incongruity was too strong. "What's wrong? Isn't this the dress of your hometown, Earth? Why are you so shocked?" Su Xiaolan asked in confusion when she saw Enlin's shocked expression. His mouth was so wide that an apple could be stuffed in it. "My hometown." Enlin looked at Su Xiaolan in shock. "You know about Earth." Enlin had always thought that the world he had transmigrated to was an independent world. As far as he knew, the celestial court governed the living beings of the kingdom of the 9 states. They shouldn't have any concept of Earth. He had never mentioned the fact that he was from Earth to anyone. However, what he didn't expect was for Su Xiaolan to say the word Earth so calmly. This instantly set off a storm in his heart. Hey, what's wrong with you now?" Su Xiaolan placed her hands on her hips and said in annoyance, "Earth is the mortal world governed by the celestial court. Why don't I know about it?" and Lin did his best to calm down. He digested Su Xiaolan's words and sorted out the questions he wanted to ask. Then why don't the people on Earth know about the existence of the celestial court? The space we're in is different. When we descend to the mortal world, we use a spatial teleportation gate to get there. Ah, so that's how it is. Then how do you know that I'm from Earth? Our mortal school teacher, Madagascar, told us. She's responsible for teaching us about the culture and knowledge of the mortal world. It's also because of her class today that I'm wearing mortal clothes at her request. By the way, does this dress look good? Su Xiaolan smiled at Lin and shook the hem of her dress lightly. I've never seen anyone as beautiful as you in a princess dress. And Lin came to his senses and looked at the woman before him with an honest expression. Su Xiaolan was quite satisfied with Lin's answer, and the smile on her face grew even wider. After all, there was no girl who didn't like being praised for her beauty. Oh, right, there's one more thing. I didn't have a chance to tell you because you were detained. Su Xiaolan seemed to have thought of something, and she clapped her hands together with a smile on her face. What's the matter? And Lin asked curiously. Yesterday, Madagascar appointed you as the mortal subject representative of our class. Su Xiaolan said with a smile. The subject representative. When Lin heard this, he was shocked at first. When he came to his senses, he raised his head at a 45-degree angle and stared blankly at the sky. The clear blue sky, the bright and beautiful sun. Everything was so beautiful. Had he turned over a new leaf? Chapter 10. And Lin walked into the classroom and found a seat in the back row. He felt that his classmates seemed to be paying more attention to him. After some students saw him appear, they even whispered to each other. Although Lin didn't know what they were talking about, he was sure that they weren't praising him. Recently, things had been happening to him one after another. Not only were the students talking about him, but even Lin couldn't help but want to complain. Today's key lesson was mortal studies. In order to match the occasion, the students in the class were dressed in a variety of popular clothing series on Earth. There were jeans, tank tops, t-shirts, dresses. To be more exaggerated, there were even people wearing suits and cheongsams. It was a complete hodgepodge of clothing exhibition hall. The scene was as strange as it could be. Another thing to mention was that the talent in the suit was their class monitor, Xinyuan Cheng. He wore a suit and a blue tie, and he even wore a pair of sunglasses. His attire was very handsome, just like a 007 agent. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with him. However, could you imagine him wearing this attire and sitting upright in the front row with his hands flat on the table, listening attentively to the class? And Lin repressed his laughter and did his best to suppress it. Not long after, their teacher, Madagascar, walked into the classroom. She wore a light yellow checkered shirt and a pair of red-framed glasses. She looked very intellectual and beautiful. Not only that, she was tall and graceful. Her waist-length hair was slightly curled, and her well-proportioned calves were wrapped in black stockings. She looked fashionable and sexy. She was originally very imposing, but when she walked into the classroom, she saw 007's Xinyuan Cheng sitting in the front row with a serious face. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. The students looked at Madagascar strangely, not knowing why she suddenly laughed. Earth Immortal Yu awkwardly averted her gaze. Then, as if nothing had happened, she began her lecture. The purpose of Xiaoxian United University's Mortal Studies course was to make it easier for students to descend to the mortal world when they served in the celestial court in the future. The specific content of the Mortal Studies course was the culture and customs of various countries on Earth, the distribution of power, natural geography, and the two required languages of the mortal world, English and Chinese. Compared to the other classes, which were like listening to a book from heaven, this time Lin finally had a sense of superiority. What he regretted was that the results of this course were the same as the other courses. The content in Madagascar's class was the most basic of all, such as the Earth having 7 continents and Hua being in Asia. And Lin had no idea what this class meant to him. So he was sleepy again. The Mortal Studies class lasted for the whole day, and Lin did not know how he got through it. Finally, the class ended with a sentence from Madagascar. And Lin is the subject representative of this class, so if you have any questions after class, You can ask him. That being said, Lin knew that this group of geniuses had their own pride. Compared to being ashamed to ask for help, they would probably prefer to be self-reliant. As expected, after class, no one took the initiative to ask him questions. Lin sighed and was about to get up to leave. Lin, are you free? A soft and gentle voice rang in his ear. Lin looked to the side, and his mind suddenly went blank. He looked at the girl in front of him in a daze. The girl's blue eyes were dreamy. Her eyelids were drooping, and she looked at Lin with embarrassment. Lin had never had the opportunity to look at her from such a close distance. At this moment, he felt as if his heart had stopped beating. I'm free. May I ask what classmate Su Qinyan wants? After a while, Lin squeezed out this sentence in fear and trepidation. Lin really didn't know why this godly campus belle, who had used her beauty to crush all of the other campus belles in the university, had come to find him. Can you take some time to teach me how to speak Mandarin and English? I've never had any talent in languages. Don't worry, I won't take up much of your time. As if afraid that Lin would refuse, Su Qinyan hurriedly added, This happiness came too suddenly. Lin's heartbeat was probably 2 or 3 times faster than before. He was so excited that he almost went into shock. Hang in there. Lin, you can do it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you miss it, then you'll really be destined to be alone for the rest of your life. Lin's mind was stirred. He knew that at this moment, he had to be even more calm. Okay, after all, I'm a subject representative. I help students who are in trouble. It's my duty and my honor. Sit down, I'll teach you slowly. Lin revealed a warm smile as he said to Su Qinyan. Su Qinyan nodded and sat next to Lin. She had a grateful look on her face. Then I'll have to trouble you. As Su Qinyan sat down, Lin smelled the faint fragrance of orchids in an empty valley. Although he was extremely nervous, he still tried hard to appear calm. Then, Su Qinyan, to what extent have you learned Mandarin and English? Lin's tone was calm as he asked with a serious face. Su Qinyan pursed her lips and said with a trace of grievance on her face, I don't usually like to talk. I've never been good with languages. Now that I'm learning Mandarin and English, I haven't even learned the pronunciation. Well, to be precise, I haven't learned a single syllable. Su Qinyan's voice was soft and soft. It made Lin's heart melt. He always thought that a person like Su Qinyan, who looked so cold and aloof, would have an extremely cold voice. He didn't expect Su Qinyan's voice to be so cute and soft. Speaking of which, in his memory, this was the first time Su Qinyan spoke. Usually, Su Qinyan appeared on campus with the image of an iceberg beauty. She almost didn't communicate with others. Others said that she was a Tao addict who was obsessed with Tao and only interested in cultivation. Now it seemed that it was because she didn't like to talk much. You can only develop a sense of language by talking more. How about this? I'll teach you some basic phrases first. Then I'll teach you pinyin and phonetic symbols. Lin smiled faintly and wrote a few words on the table. These words were teacher, student, school, class. These words were in Chinese and English. Every time Lin read it, Su Qinyan would repeat it. After a long time, Su Qinyan finally grasped the pronunciation of these words. Lin deeply understood that Su Qinyan wasn't lying when she said that her talent in languages was poor. Su Qinyan also realized that she was learning these 2 languages very slowly. Her delicate face was full of apology. She whispered, I'm sorry, I wasted your time. Lin shook his head with a straight face. Classmates should help each other. If you say this again, I won't be happy. Hearing this, Su Qinyan's beautiful eyes brightened. She smiled faintly and said, Sister Chang'e always told me that no man is good. But I think you're an exception, Lin. You're really a good person. Her smile was like the brightest spring sunshine. It melted the ancient ice and instantly broke the defense in Lin's heart. At that moment, Lin felt that he was in love. Chapter 11. Lin's face was a little hot. Su Qinyan's words had left him in a daze. After a long time, he recovered from Su Qinyan's words and asked in surprise, Chang'e, that Chang, you from the Moon Palace? Is she your sister? Yes, not my biological sister, but a sister I recognized. She's very nice to me. She's my best friend." At the mention of Chong, Su Qingyun also smiled. And Lin's interest was also piqued. He didn't expect the legendary Chong, from Earth to exist in this world. And Lin couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. He then asked, "Is there a rabbit in the Moon Palace who can grind medicine and a man who cuts trees every day?" "Ah, the rabbit you're talking about is Little You. It makes pills in the Moon Palace. Also, the Moon Palace has a rule that all men are prohibited from setting foot in there. You said there's a man cutting trees there. How is that possible?" Su Qianyun replied with a smile. "I see." And Lin nodded. It seemed that the actual situation here was somewhat different from the legends on Earth. Are Ho, and Chong still husband and wife? And Lin continued to ask curiously. "How is that possible? Sister Chong is the most beautiful woman in the Celestial Court. Her suitors can form a line from the Celestial Court to the Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas. Why would she fall for an Earth immortal who only knows how to shoot at the moon?" "Shoot at the moon?" And Lin was even more confused this time. "Because there are too many suitors for Sister Chong. She made a rule that only those who can shoot an arrow at the Moon Palace from the ground are qualified to meet her," Su Qianyun explained. "Oh, I see." And Lin came to a realization. Then did he shoot the arrow at the Moon Palace? Su Qianyun shook her head. "No, I heard that he persisted for 9 years. In the end, he seemed to have mastered archery and became an Earth immortal. After that, he left happily." And Lin, this was far too different from the Ho in his impression. He was truly speechless. "Then how did you become sisters with Chong? I have to start from when I was 5 years old. At the time, Sister Chong came to the Purple Star State to collect glacial water and passed by the Greenwood Palace." And Lin was only asking this question casually, but to his surprise, Su Qianyun told him everything about her and Chong in a completely unguarded manner. Su Qianyun spoke with a serious expression. She told him everything from when she was a child to when Chong noticed her extraordinary aptitude, all the way to when she and Chong were growing up. She told him everything, regardless of whether it was big or small. And Lin became more and more uneasy as he listened. Hey, aren't you trusting me a little too much? You even told me about how Chong would kiss you every time you went to the Moon Palace to play. Wait a minute, Chong even hugged you to sleep when you were 16 years old." And Lin realized that he seemed to have heard something incredible. He immediately stopped Su Qianyun from speaking any further in order to prevent himself from being caught in an undeserved disaster due to knowing too much. And Lin was a little embarrassed. Why did Su Qianyun tell him everything? This was way too illogical. Furthermore, Su Qianyun answered whatever he asked. Did she still have the self-awareness of being the #1 goddess? Right at this moment, a thought surfaced in Lin's mind. Could it be that she was a natural airhead? Sigh. Let's hurry up and learn some more, and Lin suggested with a resigned expression. Su Qianyun wasn't enraged by Lin's sudden interruption. Instead, she nodded obediently before placing her hands on the table and silently waiting for Lin to teach her what he was going to teach her. A thought suddenly appeared in Lin's mind as he looked at her. After a period of internal conflict, he still wanted to give it a try. Next, let's try to say some simple short sentences, and Lin said solemnly. After that, he wrote 2 short sentences on the paper and continued. Next, we're going to practice the simplest subject-verb-object structure. Repeat after me. Okay, I'll definitely read it seriously. Su Qianyun was completely focused. I love you. The soft voice rang out again. I love you, Mandarin. I love you, Mandarin. Su Qianyun repeated after him word by word. And Lin felt his blood boiling. He was so excited that he almost fainted. The goddess confessed to me, and Lin giggled at the side. You're smiling so happily. Is it because I'm reading it well? Su Qianyun saw the smile on Lin's face and asked happily. And Lin came back to his senses and nodded. You're reading it very well, but I think you can read it a few more times to familiarize yourself with it. And, okay, may I ask what this sentence means? Su Qianyun asked curiously. Oh no, how should I explain it to her? This time, and Lin was dumbfounded. It was said that impulsiveness was the devil. Only now did he realize that how to explain the meaning of this word to Su Qinyan was a big problem. After an internal struggle, Lin could only bet that Su Qinyan was a simple-minded girl. I'm just teaching you a simple subject-verb-object phrase. Please believe me. This is the meaning of I love you, and Lin said seriously. Oh, so it means I love you. Su Qinyan nodded absent-mindedly. But then, she seemed to realize something and fell into silence. The most frightening thing was that the air suddenly became quiet. This kind of silent atmosphere seemed to be brewing something, and Lin was very nervous. He just wanted to make a joke and hoped that she wouldn't take it seriously. Okay, and Lin admitted that he chose this phrase as an example to teach Su Qinyan. It was indeed a little suicidal. Sai, who asked him to suddenly awaken his ability to flirt with girls. He couldn't stop it, and Lin looked towards Su Qinyan with a hint of unease. He could see tears welling up in her bright blue eyes, and her delicate cheeks were flushed red. She pursed her lips tightly, looking as if she were about to burst into tears. And Lin saw this and began to regret it. He quickly explained, I'm just teaching you grammar. I don't mean anything else. Don't misunderstand. Su Qinyan raised her head and looked at Lin in a daze. She looked extremely wronged, but had no place to complain. She pursed her delicate lips and said in a tearful voice, Big Sister Chong, he's right. There really isn't a single good man. What kind of feeling would it be when a peerless and elegant woman pouted at you coquettishly with tears in her eyes? Oh my God, so cute. And Lin's blood was pumping. He was so excited that he was out of breath. Then his eyes turned black, and he fainted. Su Qinyan didn't know how much damage her expression had caused to Lin. When she saw Lin suddenly fainting with blood flowing from his nose, she couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. Lin, are you okay? Hurry and wake up. Don't scare me. Seeing that Lin still had no reaction, Su Qinyan panicked. She thought that her previous words were too hurtful and caused Lin to faint from anger. Thus, she was extremely ashamed. She carried Lin and ran to the infirmary. Chapter 12. When Lin woke up again, the first thing he saw was Su Xiaolan's flawless face. She leaned close to him and blinked her eyes as if she was checking something. Is there something on my face? Lin asked weakly. Su Xiaolan smiled faintly. Yes. She stretched out her slender finger and gently touched the tip of Lin's nose. Lin was embarrassed by such an intimate action. He blushed and said, It's not good to take advantage of me when I'm weak. Rip. It hurts. Lin covered his nose and shouted. Then he saw a small talisman in Su Xiaolan's hand. This is the hemostasis talisman. Seeing that your nose isn't bleeding anymore, I tore it off. Su Xiaolan looked at Lin with a hint of ridicule in her eyes. Then she continued, Lin, it's your first day as a section representative, and you're already working so hard that you even fainted due to a nosebleed. You're really something. Lin touched his nose awkwardly. He didn't know how to respond to Su Xiaolan's words. Oh, by the way, where's Su Qinyan? She left after medicine. Master Lu said that you were fine. You don't know how she looked when she found out the real reason you fainted from medicine, Master Lu. TSK, Tisk. I finally had a chance to make the #1 goddess of the university like me, but I'm afraid it's all gone now. Su Xiaolan looked at Lin with a gloating expression. Lin sighed. She won't like me anyway. What's the point of thinking so much about it? At least you know your place. Hurry up and go eat. Su Xiaolan shouted. Only then did Lin realize that his stomach was empty. You didn't eat either? Lin asked. It's all because of you. I went to the cafeteria, but when I heard that you fainted, I rushed over to take care of you. Tell me, how are you going to repay me for treating you so well? Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at Lin and snorted coldly. How about I devote myself to you? Lin said with a grateful expression. Scram. Just like that, Lin's life returned to normal. Days passed by, and Su Qinyan would still come to him to learn Chinese and English. However, she maintained a subtle distance from him, clearly holding a grudge against him for what had happened in the past. But even so, Lin was the only one who could talk to her. After all, apart from cultivating, Su Qinyan only cared about learning those 2 languages. She did not care about anything else. Before he knew it, 3 months had passed. One night, a certain shackle in Enlin's body was broken by a vast energy, and he successfully broke through to the 4th stage Dao body. This could be said to be the happiest night of Enlin's life. Through his hard work, he proved that he didn't need to rely on that damned system, but could rely on his own ability to cultivate. So what if you want me to do 100 million to the power of 100 million push-ups? I'll just cultivate by myself. And Lin said proudly. Although he said that, he still looked at his god of war system expectantly. 5th stage Dao body, condition, absorb the vital energy of 10 spirit stones. Spirit stones? And Lin was slightly taken aback. His school provided food and lodging, so he had no chance to come into contact with the energy currency of the cultivation world. Therefore, he did not have a single spirit stone. 10 spirit stones shouldn't be too hard to come by. Should I ask Su Xiaolan and see if she has any? And Lin was just about to go next door, but he stopped at the door and hesitated. As the last student in Class 1, he had often troubled Su Xiaolan to tutor him. It was also because Su Xiaolan had helped him too much that Enlin really couldn't bring himself to ask her for money. Just as Enlin was hesitating, a figure flashed through his mind. Xinyuan Cheng. He had once said something like this to Enlin. If you encounter any problems with your cultivation, you can tell me. As the class monitor, I'll definitely do my best to help you. Xinyuan Cheng's house wasn't far from here. It wasn't too late now, so he should be able to make it if he rushed over. With this thought, Enlin set off and headed to Xinyuan Cheng's house. Enlin didn't know if what Xinyuan Cheng said that day was true or false. To be honest, he had a lot of pressure on this trip, but for the sake of cultivation, he was ready to go all out. With a perturbed mood, Enlin knocked on Xinyuan Cheng's door. When the door opened, he saw Xinyuan Cheng wearing a golden robe. Seeing that the person standing outside the door was Enlin, a gentle smile appeared on Xinyuan Cheng's face. May I know why Enlin is visiting at night? Xinyuan Cheng's speech and behavior were elegant and decent, which made Enlin's nervousness ease a lot. Class monitor, you told me before that if I encounter any difficulties in cultivation, I can ask you for help. Is that true? Enlin asked. Of course it's true. Enlin, did you encounter any difficulties? Come, let's talk inside. Xinyuan Cheng gestured for Enlin to come in. Enlin waved his hands and said with some embarrassment, There's no need to trouble yourself. I just want to borrow 10 spirit stones from you. I'll return them to you when I have more spirit stones in the future. That's it. Xinyuan Cheng smiled faintly and took out a bag of spirit stones from his storage ring. Without asking why Enlin wanted these spirit stones, he tossed it to him. I don't have any spare change. Here are 500 spirit stones. You can have them all. Enlin held the heavy spirit stones in his arms and was a little dazed. Xinyuan Cheng laughed heartily, and his eyes were full of encouragement. As long as you have the will to improve and work hard in your cultivation, this little bit of money is really nothing to me. Enlin was extremely touched. He had 1,000 words to say, but they all came together in one sentence. Big Brother Cheng, thank you. With the 500 spirit stones in hand, Enlin returned to his house. He placed all the spirit stones on the table, and they piled up into a small mountain. Looking at the glistening, translucent stones that glowed with a faint green luster, Enlin was extremely excited. He impatiently activated his cultivation method and absorbed the vital energy within the spirit stones. Waves of warmth flowed through his body and continuously cleansed and strengthened his body. After 10 spirit stones, a burst of energy broke through a certain seal with a crack. Enlin's aura changed, and his rank broke through to the 5th stage Dao body. There was no time to sigh with emotion. The first thing he did after breaking through was nervously look at his system interface. 6th stage Dao body, condition, absorb the vital energy of 10 plus 10 spirit stones. What a familiar routine. Seeing this string of words, Enlin couldn't help but mutter again. Big Brother Cheng, thank you for your spirit stones. After absorbing 20 spirit stones, and Lin's rank broke through to the 6th stage Tao body. Then, a new notification appeared in the system interface. 7th stage Tao body condition. Absorb the vital energy of 10 times 10 spirit stones. The corners of Lin's mouth curled up. This kind of familiar condition was like swapping push-ups for spirit stones. He didn't hesitate at all and continued to absorb the energy from the spirit stones. After absorbing the energy of 100 spirit stones, his aura once again broke through a certain threshold, and he broke through to the 7th stage Tao body. There was a satisfied expression on Lin's face as he sensed the vast and surging energy within his body. In a single night, his cultivation base broke through from the 3rd stage Tao body all the way to the 7th stage Tao body. This made him feel as if he was in a dream. One had to know that the 7th stage Tao body was already considered the average level of freshmen in Xiaoxian United University. The higher one's cultivation base was, the more difficult it would be to advance. For ordinary people in the Tao body final stage, they would need to spend several years or even several decades to advance to the next stage. Even the prodigies who could enter this university had to cultivate diligently for 1 or 2 years before they could achieve this. Yet, Lin had achieved this simply by swallowing spirit stones. He couldn't help but feel elated. Looking at the remaining 300 or so spirit stones, Lin knew that their use might have come to an end. After all, if nothing unexpected happened, he would need 10 billion spirit stones to continue breaking through. Although this was what he thought, he still glanced at the system, unwilling to give up. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't looked, but once he did, Lin was stunned again. Chapter 13. 8th Stage Tao Body Condition. Defeat an enemy of the 8th Stage Tao Body or above in a head-on confrontation. Defeat an enemy of a higher rank? Lin was a bit dazed. He had never heard of this method of breaking through. However, this condition didn't seem impossible. It seemed like it was better than eating 10 billion spirit stones. The next day, on the way to class, Lin was still fretting over how to break through. What's wrong? Why haven't you spoken on the way? In Su Xiaolan's eyes, Lin had always played the role of a character who would die if he didn't ridicule her. Now, however, he had become a quiet, handsome man. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Say, is it difficult for a person of the 7th stage Tao body to defeat an 8th stage Tao body in a head-on confrontation?" Lin hesitated for a moment before finally asking, "It's not difficult. When I was of the 6th stage Tao body, I already defeated my cousin who was of the 8th stage Tao body," Su Xiaolan said calmly. "That's amazing. How did you do it?" Lin was a bit surprised. Su Xiaolan smiled smugly. His bloodline, the purity of his vital energy, and the comprehension of his direct inheritance cultivation method are all crushed. It's that simple. Lin's face darkened. How the F*CK is that simple? Then what about a person without a bloodline, with a common cultivation method and an ordinary vital energy purity? Can a person of the 7th stage defeat an 8th stage Tao body? Lin asked, unwilling to give up. Su Xiaolan sneered. "Unless that 8th stage enemy is a retard." "That hurts, big sis." Lin wailed. Hey, what does this have to do with you? Why did you become like this after listening to my words?" Su Xiaolan couldn't help but jump in fright when she saw Lin's sudden change in emotions. Lin sighed. "To tell you the truth, I'm already of the 7th stage Tao body. Now, I have no choice but to do this. I want to defeat an enemy of a higher rank than me." Hearing Lin's words, Su Xiaolan's bright eyes widened, as if she had heard something unbelievable. It's not good to lie. I can't feel any energy fluctuations from your body." Su Xiaolan came to her senses and immediately realized the problem. Hearing this, Lin released the energy within his body, and his aura began to climb steadily before finally reaching a peak. Seeing this, Su Xiaolan covered her mouth lightly. She could no longer conceal the shock on her face. "My God, it really is a 7th stage Tao body," she stammered. "You advanced from 0th stage Tao body to 7th stage Tao body in less than 4 months. How did you do it?" Su Xiaolan was excited. It was as if she had encountered something that she couldn't understand. If I told you that I did push-ups and ate spirit stones, would you believe me? And Lin asked, Are you Asterisk King kidding me? Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at him. Tell me the truth. And Lin smiled smugly and flipped his short hair. There's no harm in telling you the truth. It's because I'm extraordinarily talented. I'm a rare prodigy that only appears once in 10,000 years. And Lin thought that he would be ridiculed by Su Xiaolan after blowing his own trumpet. To his surprise, she nodded in agreement. That's more like it. Like I said, how could a piece of trash have a true God's letter of recommendation? He definitely has to have some ability. Hey, calling someone a piece of trash right in front of me? Don't you think about my feelings? And Lin was truly hurt by Su Xiaolan's blabbermouth time and time again. Didn't my words just now mean that I denied that you're a piece of trash? Su Xiaolan smiled at Lin. Her eyes and brows curved into crescents, making her look especially adorable. Seeing Su Xiaolan's beautiful smile, Lin's anger immediately dissipated. He was also quite helpless about this. He could only sigh. A girl's smile was truly a death-defying gold medal. That's right. It's easier to talk to an acquaintance. I can ask her to cooperate with me and make her my enemy. And Lin had a flash of inspiration. He had found a way to complete this mission. Xiaolan, can you do me a favor? And Lin's eyes twinkled as he pleaded. What favor? Seeing in Lin's expression, Su Xiaolan couldn't help but be a little wary. You will be my enemy. Fight with me and then be defeated by me. And Lin didn't keep her in suspense and said straightforwardly. Su Xiaolan recalled their previous conversation. And Lin did tell her that for some reason, he wanted to defeat someone with a higher realm than him. All right, tell me, how do you want to fight? Su Xiaolan didn't mind helping Lin and asked. Within Lin's own strength, he definitely wouldn't be able to defeat her. And Lin thought for a while and then said, You and I will exchange a few blows. It has to be very intense. Then you will fall to the ground and loudly admit that you have lost. All right, let's do it. Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement. And Lin circulated all the strength in his body and fiercely stomped on the ground. He struck a palm towards Su Xiaolan, who was in front of him. Su Xiaolan also extended her hand. When their palms met, a violent gust of air exploded, and Lin was directly forced to retreat, while Su Xiaolan stood motionless on the spot. Again, and Lin attacked fiercely again. His palms turned into a series of afterimages as they struck towards Su Xiaolan. After exchanging a few blows with Lin, Su Xiaolan suddenly cried out and fell to the ground. Immortal Lin is very powerful. I concede defeat. Su Xiaolan had a pitiful look on her face as she looked at Lin pitifully. Her acting was so vivid that Lin really felt like he had defeated her. If her acting skills were on Earth, she would definitely win an Oscar. And Lin was completely subdued by Su Xiaolan's acting skills. However, he still came to his senses and looked at his system interface. No changes as expected, it still doesn't work. And Lin fell in a deep thought. The mission requirement was defeat an enemy of the 8th stage Dao body or above head-on. It was probably because the contradiction of enemy wasn't highlighted, so the system didn't confirm it. Then, would this work? And Lin looked at the collapsed Su Xiaolan and the expression in his eyes changed. Hurry up and get up. You look so ugly when you're lying on the ground. I can't even bear to look anymore. And Lin said with a look of disdain. What did you say? Su Xiaolan stood up with a frosty expression. And Lin spread his hands and said slowly, To tell you the truth, compared to Su Qianyun, your appearance is like an ugly duckling compared to a white swan. The more I look at your face, the uglier it becomes. And Lin. Su Xiaolan glared at Lin and spat out Lin's name through gritted teeth. And Lin smirked. What? You don't like me telling you the truth? Then come and hit me. As soon as he said this, Su Xiaolan really pounced at him and an astonishing aura exploded from her body. A sense of danger suddenly enveloped Lin's entire body. That's right, this is the aura an enemy should have. Seeing this, Lin was overjoyed and he hurriedly yelled, Su Xiaolan, exchange blows with me now and then be defeated by me. Then I'll succeed. Su Xiaolan instantly rushed in front of Lin. Apart from an angry sneer, there was no other expression on her face. B*TCH, eat my palm. Su Xiaolan shouted and slapped Lin's face mercilessly with her palm. The speed of this slap was so fast that Lin didn't even have a chance to dodge. Slap! And Lin's head spun from this slap, and he directly flipped 3,600 degrees in the air before falling to the ground. Splat! And Lin fell to the ground and spat out blood. His eyes were wide open and filled with regret. Damn it, what did I do? Chapter 14. And Lin attracted the attention of many prodigies when he walked into the classroom. It was not because he was handsome, but because the left side of his face was red and swollen like a pig. And Lin, who hit you? Tell the class monitor. I'll stand up for you. Xianyuan Cheng felt indignant at the sight of Lin's pitiful state and spoke up for him. Hearing this, Lin shook his head. No, class rep, I just tripped by accident. After saying that, he looked at Su Xiaolan behind him with lingering fear. Su Xiaolan's pretty face turned cold. She snorted and ignored Lin. She found a seat and sat down by herself. Xianyuan Cheng's eyes lit up like torches. He seemed to have understood the ins and outs of the matter. He patted Lin's shoulder and comforted him. So it's domestic violence. It's not easy for Lin. Big brother Cheng, how can you still have the heart to mock me after seeing me in such a miserable state? And Lin's face hurt with every word he said. At this moment, he forced himself to speak to Xianyuan Cheng. He grimaced in pain. Xianyuan Cheng smiled with understanding and encouraged him. Then Lin, cultivate well. Try to surpass Su Xiaolan in terms of cultivation as soon as possible. That way you won't be bullied. And Lin's lips twitched, and he heaved a forlorn sigh as he gave up on explaining. He nodded at Xianyuan Cheng and left. He wanted to find a seat. And Lin, take this. Xianyuan Cheng's voice came from behind him. And Lin turned around and saw Xianyuan Cheng tossing a small bottle to him. Apply it on your face to reduce swelling, Xianyuan Cheng said. After receiving the bottle, Lin was slightly stunned. Then he was moved to tears. It was as if he'd been crushed by a group of divine beasts and was walking alone in the wilderness. And then an angel suddenly appeared and said gently to him, "Don't be afraid. I'm still here." How gentle and considerate she was, returning to his seat, and Lin applied the ointment on his face. As soon as the medicine was applied, there was a cool sensation on his face. The burning pain had also subsided a lot. This medicine is not bad. And Lin nodded and carefully put away the ointment in case he needed it. Am I no longer able to raise my cultivation level through the system? And Lin was a little depressed. He opened the system interface in his mind and stared blankly at the realm column. That's right. Aren't cultivation methods and techniques only available to those of the 7th stage Tao body? And Lin thought for a moment and immediately opened the cultivation methods interface in the system. The cultivation methods displayed on the interface were divided into metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, yin-yang, and soul cultivation. Currently, only the lightning cultivation method was lit up. Stage 1 Thunder Essence Cultivation Method. Condition: be struck by natural lightning formed between heaven and earth once. And Lin, what the F***CK? Are you asking me to commit suicide? And Lin was startled by the system's request, and his eyes widened in shock. Normally, natural lightning had a high voltage and electric current of over 100,000 volts. If he were to stand there and be struck by lightning, would he still be able to survive? Life or strength, which was more important? In my opinion, I should just forget about this cultivation method. And Lin shook his head and turned his gaze to the technique interface in the system. There was nothing on this interface except for a single icon. Mountain Quaking Fist. Condition: consume 10 grams of Mountain Soul Essence. What's Mountain Soul Essence? And Lin was a little confused. Who cared what it was? At least this requirement gave him hope that he could achieve it. Should I ask Su Xiaolan after school? And Lin looked ahead and saw Su Xiaolan sitting there with a look of anger on her face. He felt a headache coming on. You've already hit me and scolded me. Why aren't you appeased? I was the one who suffered the most, okay? The main lesson in the morning was the formation class, which was taught by their homeroom teacher, Flying Sword God. The handsome male sword immortal was clearly in a good mood today. As the lesson went on, he talked about his heroic deeds in the past. It had to be said, Sword Immortal Ling Xiao was quite a good storyteller. He made it sound like a deluge of heavenly flowers. There were depressing scenes in the stories, such as when he was looked down upon by a prodigy of a certain sect when he was young and slandered him in every possible way. There were also explosive moments, such as when the Flying Sword God made a powerful return 5 years later. With just one sword strike, he shocked an entire sect and scared the prodigy who had once mocked him to the point where he pissed his pants. Story after story, all of which were incomparably brilliant, causing the entire class to continuously let out cries of surprise. Even Lin felt as if he was listening to a cultivation novel. Towards the end, the homeroom teacher seemed to realize that he had led the class astray. He hurriedly said, "From this, it can be seen that the path of cultivation is full of twists and turns. We can't be discouraged easily, and we can't admit defeat easily," and forcefully changed the topic. After that, Sword Immortal Ling Xiao began to explain the methods and techniques of setting up spell formations with a serious expression. Immediately, the audience booed, and many people revealed disappointed looks. Obviously, everyone preferred the homeroom teacher to tell stories rather than lecture. Unknowingly, it was time to end school. The students left the classroom one after another, and Lin took the opportunity to walk to Su Xiaolan with an apologetic smile. "Fairy Lan Lan, I was wrong today. I'm sorry." And Lin lowered his head and said apologetically. Su Xiaolan frowned and snorted. "That's it." And Lin's voice was stifled. He roared in his heart. "What else do you want me to do?" Of course, at this moment, Lin definitely did not dare to say what he was thinking in his heart. His thoughts raced, and he finally thought of the right words to use. "Fairy Lan Lan, not only am I blind, but I'm also dumb. I can't speak properly. What happened today was my fault. I really shouldn't have gone against my conscience and slandered your beauty. That sentence was the most heartless sentence I've ever said in my life. I'm guilty. If you still can't vent your anger, slap me again. Come on, the left side isn't swollen yet. Give me a symmetrical shape." After Lin finished speaking, he turned the other side of his face that wasn't swollen and moved closer to Su Xiaolan. He closed his eyes and looked like he was ready to let her do whatever she wanted. When Su Xiaolan saw Lin's posture, a smile finally appeared on her frosty face. However, before Lin opened his eyes, she retracted her smile and purposely put on a straight face. She said coldly, "All right, seeing that you're apologizing so sincerely, I'll forgive you." Hearing this, Lin felt as if he had been greatly liberated. He opened his eyes and saw that Su Xiaolan's expression was much better. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. "Actually, I have another question that I want to ask you. Do you know what mountain solescence is?" Lin hesitated for a moment, but still decided to tell her about it. "Why are you asking this? What are you trying to do now?" Su Xiaolan rested her chin on her hand and asked in a charming voice. "It's just that due to some special reasons, I need to find 10 grams of mountain solescence to try." When Lin heard Su Xiaolan's words, he knew that there was a chance, and his eyes lit up. "Try." Su Xiaolan's cherry lips slightly opened, and her eyes stared straight at Lin. Seeing Su Xiaolan's expression, Lin had an ominous premonition. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "No, no problem. It's just that this thing is a bit hard to come by. How about this? I'll take you to Full Moon Mountain to look for it." A gentle smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she suggested to Lin. Full Moon Mountain was the tallest mountain on their campus, and there was a full moon platform at the peak. The scenery on the mountain was extremely beautiful. There were countless rare flowers and plants, and there were even some cute little spirit beasts. Therefore, it was a mountain that female students liked to visit the most. When he heard that there was a chance to find mountain solescence at Full Moon Mountain, he instantly became excited. He and Su Xiaolan hit it off and immediately set off for Full Moon Mountain. Mountain Quaking Fist. I finally have the chance to practice the first immortal spell in my cultivation life. An expression of extreme anticipation appeared on Enlin's face. Chapter 15. All living things have spirits. Spirits can nurture souls, and souls can transform into gods. If we want to find the mountain's soul essence, we have to first go to a place where the spiritual energy is concentrated. Su Xiaolan wore a white Taoist robe and walked at the front with light steps. She explained this to Enlin as she walked. The golden jade bell tied to her waist made a crisp sound as she walked, resembling the chirping of birds. Then how do we know where the spiritual energy is concentrated? Enlin asked. Your rank is too low right now, so you don't have a direct sense of the density of spiritual energy. So, you still have to rely on me for this. You won't be able to learn it. Su Xiaolan turned around and glanced at Enlin with a smug expression on her face. I'm already at the 7th stage Tao body, and you're only at the 9th stage Tao body. What's there to be proud of? Enlin was a bit unconvinced when he saw Su Xiaolan's expression. I'm sorry, but I've already reached the 10th stage Tao body since a month ago. Su Xiaolan smiled at the dumbfounded Enlin. Are you saying that you're the only one allowed to advance in rank, but others aren't allowed to advance in rank? Enlin stood rooted to the spot, and he was suddenly struck by the urge to cry. Why is Su Xiaolan always able to hurt people without even realizing it? Enlin spent 3 months to advance from the 3rd stage Tao body to the 4th stage. His other rank advancements were actually all achieved through the use of system hacks. But Su Xiaolan only spent 2 months to advance from the 9th stage Tao body to the 10th stage. One had to realize that the higher one's rank was, the harder it was to advance in rank. If Enlin cultivated diligently, how long would it take for him to advance from the 9th stage Tao body to the 10th stage? 2 years? 20 years? Thinking of this, Enlin felt a deep sense of malice coming from a prodigy. He followed behind Su Xiaolan gloomily, a myriad of thoughts running through his mind. Unknowingly, under the guidance of Su Xiaolan, he came to a mountain stream. Clear spring water flowed in the mountain stream, and bright red flowers bloomed around it. A strange fragrance filled the air. Enlin breathed in a few breaths of this floral fragrance and felt weak all over, unable to exert any strength. Is this flower poisonous? He came to his senses and pointed at the bewitching red flowers. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at Enlin. You don't even know about the fire lotus. Was your alchemy class taught by the class leader? Hearing Su Xiaolan's words, Enlin finally remembered. The fire lotus flower was bright red in color, shaped like a lotus, and had an intoxicating aura. Regular inhalation could nourish one's body, and it had the effect of gathering spiritual energy. It was an 8th grade spirit medicine. Normally, rare herbs could be divided into 3 grades: spiritual herbs, heavenly herbs, and divine herbs. Different grades of medicine could be used to refine different grades of pills. For example, spirit medicine could be used to refine spirit pills, and heaven medicine could be used to refine heaven pills. 1st grade spirit medicine was the most precious, while 9th grade spirit medicine was the most inferior. As an 8th grade spirit medicine, the fire lotus's grade was a little low, but it was still a spirit medicine, and it could be considered as a rare medicinal herb. Thinking of this, Enlin squatted down and began his harvesting career. Su Xiaolan saw Enlin holding the fire lotus flower in his arms like it was a treasure, as if he had picked up a treasure. He had completely forgotten the reason why he came here, and couldn't help but mutter, so useless. She didn't look at Enlin anymore, but touched the craggy stone wall with her hand, feeling the aura flowing in the veins. This should be enough, Su Xiaolan murmured. Following that, she took a deep breath and used a clear and loud voice to shout, Earth Grandpa, come out. Because this voice was too loud, even Enlin, who was squatting on the ground, was shocked. Before Enlin could come back to his senses, the ground suddenly shook violently. An earthquake? An expression of shock appeared on Enlin's face. Then, he witnessed an even more astonishing scene. A huge body made of rocks slowly emerged from the ground. It was more than 10 feet tall, and its pale yellow eyes shone with a thick light. When its body moved, there was a loud sound of rocks colliding, and it seemed extremely powerful. When Enlin saw this monster made of rocks, he didn't know why, but he thought of a character he often met when he played games in the past, Giant Lava Monster Moffat. And this giant lava monster was actually called Earth Grandpa by Su Xiaolan. "Little girl, did you call me?" A deep voice came from the mouth of the giant lava monster. It wasn't loud, but it gave off a faint sense of oppression. Su Xiaolan nodded and said, "I'm here in hope that Earth Grandpa can bestow us some mountain soul essence." Halfway through her sentence, Su Xiaolan looked back at Enlin, raised her eyebrows slightly, and then continued. "Just 10 grams will do. Mountain soul essence, I do have extra. I didn't expect someone to want this thing now. Come, I'll give it to you." The giant lava monster stretched out its hand, and in the center of its rock palm, a small brown ball slowly appeared. Su Xiaolan respectfully took the small ball and bowed to the giant lava monster. Seeing this, Enlin quickly followed Su Xiaolan's actions and bowed to it to express his gratitude. The giant lava monster nodded slightly, then slowly merged into the ground and disappeared again. "Here, the mountain soul essence is in hand. Hurry up and eat it." Su Xiaolan handed the brown ball to Enlin, her eyes faintly filled with anticipation. "I got it so easily, isn't this too easy?" Enlin originally thought that looking for the mountain soul essence would be as troublesome as looking for treasures of heaven and earth. He didn't expect to call out the earth god and then ask him to bestow a little. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Wasn't he going to do a dungeon? Wasn't he going to hunt for treasures? Wasn't this thing a treasure? Why did he give it away so easily? Su Xiaolan chuckled and said, "Why? I've only seen people who are afraid of trouble. I didn't expect you to be someone who is afraid of things being too easy." And Lin laughed dryly, not knowing how to reply. He stopped being pretentious and quickly put the brown mountain soul essence into his mouth. The taste of the mountain soul essence greatly exceeded Enlin's expectations. It melted in his mouth, and the taste was similar to that of a mint, rather cool and sweet. Delicious. Enlin nodded and praised. Su Xiaolan held back her laughter and asked expectantly, "How do you feel right now?" "I don't feel anything. What do I need to feel?" Enlin looked at Su Xiaolan in surprise and asked. This time, Su Xiaolan was a bit depressed, as if she was disappointed that what she was hoping for didn't happen. At this time, with a ding, a notification appeared in Enlin's war god system. 10 grams of mountain soul essence has been completely absorbed. Congratulations, you have learned the beginner level war god spell, Mountain Quaking Fist. Following that, the concept of the Mountain Quaking Fist, the method to use it, the effects of using it, all the information related to it flooded into Enlin's mind like a bucket of water. After a while, Enlin took a deep breath and his eyes lit up. He had obviously learned this beginner-level war god spell. He knew that if he mastered the Mountain Quaking Fist, he could collapse a mountain with one punch. Enlin began to use the Mountain Quaking Fist mantra. A golden light condensed on Enlin's fist, containing a turbulent flow of yuan qi. When Su Xiaolan saw the golden light condensing on Enlin's fist, a surprised expression appeared on her face. Enlin threw a punch at the mountain wall in the distance. His fist emitted a dazzling golden light. A golden fist about 3 meters in size surged out of his fist and slammed into the mountain wall with a vast amount of power. Boom! The mountain in front of Enlin trembled slightly, and the entire mountain wall was shattered by the punch. Then he was surprised to see that on the towering mountain wall, there was a deep dent of a fist about 3 meters in size. Chapter 16. Oh my God! Enlin couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when he saw the fist imprint on the mountain wall. The power of this immortal spell clearly gave him, the caster, a huge fright. After the initial shock, Enlin's expression became one of pride and excitement. This was the system's first immortal spell, the Mountain Quaking Fist. If it was so powerful, then what about the Thunder Essence spell? Right now, he had the urge to immediately find a place and get struck by lightning. Just the name of this spell sounded very powerful. With the example of the Mountain Quaking Fist, and Lin became more and more eager to try it out. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but snort softly when she saw Lin immersed in his own immortal spell and even putting on a self-satisfied expression. Although she didn't know where Lin learned this immortal spell, she knew that she had to do something at this moment. This immortal spell isn't that powerful. Watch me. After saying this, Su Xiaolan slammed her palm toward the mountain wall in front of her. A huge flaming palm over 6 meters wide whizzed out. Even Lin, who was quite a distance away from Su Xiaolan, felt the terrifying heat from the huge flaming palm. Immediately afterward, the huge palm imprinted on the mountain wall, and the mountain wall trembled violently. Boom! After the huge sound, a palm imprint that was countless times larger than Lin's fist imprint appeared on the stone wall. Moreover, the surroundings were charred black. Even the rocks were scorched, and Lin's mouth gaped open, and he looked at Su Xiaolan. And Lin was then greeted by the sight of her relaxed expression. It was as if she could slap that palm effortlessly. And Lin's mood started to drop again. What? Just a casual slap from her is so much more powerful than my mountain-quaking fist. So I'm only cultivating an ordinary immortal spell. What Lin didn't know was that Su Xiaolan had already used the power of her divine phoenix bloodline in this palm strike. Then, coupled with her cultivation of the 10th stage Tao body, she was able to achieve such an effect. The power of Lin's punch was actually considered to be exceptionally powerful in terms of celestial arts. Su Xiaolan was worried that he would become complacent after learning this immortal technique, so she took great pains to reveal this trick. After that, she sneaked a peek at Lin. After seeing Lin's expression, she nodded to herself and was secretly delighted. Looks like the effect is pretty good. At the very least, he no longer wore an expression as if he had the world in his hands. After successfully consuming the mountain soul essence, Lin knew that he had achieved his goal and returned to his residence. As soon as he returned to his room, he began to circulate his cultivation technique and absorb the heaven and earth yuan qi to temper his body. Looks like I have to work harder. The dumber a person is, the harder they need to work. And Lin had suffered quite a heavy blow today. He had previously thought that he could easily catch up to the prodigies of this world with the help of the system. However, the cruel reality told him that his thinking was so naive. He had no bloodline, no aptitude, and no sect to rely on. Could he really catch up to the prodigies by relying on the system? If he didn't work hard and only thought about relying on the system, the gap between them would only grow wider and wider. And Lin wasn't someone who was afraid of setbacks. The more difficult the path ahead, the more it would stimulate his fighting spirit. And it was precisely because of this that he would make the most of every minute and second to cultivate diligently. If he didn't have enough aptitude, he would make up for it with time. However, just as he was filled with fighting spirit and started to cultivate, his lower abdomen suddenly throbbed with pain. What's going on? And Lin rubbed his stomach. Right at this moment, his stomach started to hurt more and more. The intense pain assaulted his lower abdomen, causing him to be greatly alarmed. He felt something rolling around in his stomach. Could it be that he had eaten something bad? The food in the school cafeteria had always been very hygienic. Moreover, to make a person of the 7th stage Tao body have diarrhea, it had to be poison, right? I can't take it anymore, I have to poop. And Lin couldn't take it anymore and directly rushed to the washroom. Afterward, the sound of 100 elephants rushing overcame from the washroom, and he had to poop 1,000 miles in the washroom. The next day, Su Xiaolan didn't see Lin in the classroom, and she couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. On this day, Lin was squatting in the washroom. Although there was nothing left in his stomach for him to defecate, the thought of defecating until the end of time still accompanied him. On the 3rd day, Su Xiaolan still didn't see Lin, and she became even more puzzled. Could it be that this brat got into a fight with someone again, and was then captured and sent to the school detention room? Su Xiaolan recalled that Lin had suddenly used a rather powerful immortal spell, and this really was a possibility. Thinking of this, she sighed faintly and wondered if she should go to the detention room to visit Lin. On this day, Lin was squatting in the washroom. Although there was nothing left to poop in his stomach, the urge to poop until the end of time still accompanied him. and this made him completely unable to move his feet. On the fourth day, Su Xiaolan still didn't see Lin's figure, so she decided to go to the detention room to visit Lin. After school, she went to the detention room in the school, but she didn't see any trace of Lin. Strange, he wasn't in the detention room. So where did he go? Su Xiaolan's delicate eyebrows slightly furrowed, and then she had a flash of inspiration. Could it be because of the mountain soul essence? The mountain soul essence was a kind of secretion produced by the mountain god when it absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This kind of mountain soul essence itself was harmless, but if a cultivator directly consumed it, it would produce a kind of side effect, and that was an intense diarrhea for 3 days. Originally, Su Xiaolan had the attitude of playing a prank on Lin, so she didn't inform him of this matter in advance. Instead, she planned to wait until his stomach was in discomfort. Then she would be merciful enough to save him. In this way, Su Xiaolan could simply take revenge on Lin for offending her. Unexpectedly, after Lin finished eating the mountain soul essence, he didn't have any reaction at all. Instead, he had a lively appearance, which made Su Xiaolan think that he was immune to that side effect. Su Xiaolan stroked her pure white chin and muttered, "It's not that I don't want to take revenge, but it's not the right time yet." Thinking about it, this is already the 3rd day. If it's because of the mountain soul essence, I should be able to see him tomorrow. On this day, Lin was squatting in the washroom. Although there was nothing left to poop in his stomach, but the urge to poop until the end of time still accompanied him, and this made him completely unable to move his feet. That's not right, and Lin had a feeling he felt that he could try to poop out his intestines. On the 5th day, Su Xiaolan still didn't see Lin in the classroom. She once again overturned her previous guess. Could it be that Lin wasn't because of diarrhea? What a worrisome fellow. Forget it. I'll go to his house after school to take a look. On this day, Lin was squatting in the washroom. The thought of pooping until the end of time had already disappeared from his mind. You ask why he was still squatting in the washroom? That's because he couldn't stand up anymore. That's right, his legs were crippled from squatting. Chapter 17. Knock, knock, knock. Su Xiaolan knocked on Lin's door for a long time, but there was no response. The silence on the other side of the door made her a little uneasy. Could it be that Lin was not at home? Su Xiaolan had the thought of breaking open the door to find out what was going on. At that moment, the door opened, and she was shocked by the person standing in front of her. Lin, how did you become like this? Lin's face was haggard, and there were dark circles around his eyes. His muscles were withered because he had lost too much water. Most importantly, there was a mysterious smile on his face. At that moment, there was only one thought in Su Xiaolan's mind. It's over. Lin must have had diarrhea that made him lose his mind at that thought. Her heart was filled with guilt. She looked at Lin with embarrassment. At that moment, Lin suddenly said in a daze, "I've recently developed a cultivation technique that allows you to squat and absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to temper your body. Do you want to learn it?" Su Xiaolan sighed softly. Then she took out a round pill that was glowing red. This pill was known as the superior grade blood chi pill. When consumed by a cultivator, it could greatly replenish their lost chi and blood. Although the superior grade blood chi pill was expensive, Su Xiaolan could not bear to watch Lin's state any longer. Without a word, she pried open Lin's mouth and threw the pill into Lin's mouth. After swallowing the blood chi pill, Lin's body quickly replenished the water that he had lost. After a while, his face was no longer withered. Instead, there was a tinge of blood in it, and it became a little rosy. A sliver of clarity returned to Lin's lifeless eyes at this moment. He forced a smile at Su Xiaolan as he gratefully said, "Thank you." Seeing that Lin had returned to normal, Su Xiaolan let out a sigh of relief. She nodded in satisfaction and stepped into the door. Both of them tacitly avoided the topic of why Lin became like that before. Everyone knew very well what the reason was. Su Xiaolan was a little ashamed, so she didn't want to talk about it. Lin didn't have the strength to pursue the matter. Anyway, he had to eat the mountain soul essence. He could only blame his bad luck for the side effects. After the two sat down, Su Xiaolan patiently told Lin about his recent study progress and told him what he needed to study. She even took out a notebook that she had recorded in class about formations and explained the difficulties involved. And Lin had made up his mind to change his position at the bottom of the class, so he listened very attentively. In fact, after studying hard for the past few months, he had gradually adapted to life in the Cultivation University on this floating continent. At least he wasn't as clueless about cultivation as when he first came to school. For example, he was able to learn some simple array formations, some simple refining techniques, and some basic cultivation techniques. I'll spend more time tomorrow and stay in the classroom to make up for my lessons. And Lin began to lament after realizing that he had fallen behind so many classes. Hearing this, the corners of Su Xiaolan's mouth rose, and she said with a smile, "You won't be able to go to the classroom tomorrow because tomorrow is the start of the school's annual free-for-all battle event." Free-for-all battle? And Lin was puzzled. "You haven't been to class for the past few days, so you don't know about this event," Su Xiaolan explained. "The free-for-all battle is a grand event held by our school every year. Every student is required to participate in it. When the time comes, all 50,000 students in the school will gather together to participate in this event." And Lin's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he couldn't help but feel excited. This Xiaoxian United University was built on a floating continent. In terms of area alone, it was even vaster than Earth's treasure island. With the difference in age, the content that the students had to learn was very different. Therefore, the learning areas were also scattered in different places. It was exactly because of this that Lin had very few opportunities to meet up with his upperclassmen. An event that could gather all 5 years of students at the same time would definitely be very lively and bustling. He was looking forward to this kind of school-wide event, and, at the same time, he began to become curious about it. "By the way, what's the specific content of this event?" And Lin asked. "This event is very exciting," Su Xiaolan said excitedly. "The event will be held in the school's forest of 1,000 peaks. A total of 50,000 people will engage in an indiscriminate free-for-all battle that will last for 3 days. During the stipulated time, if you don't like someone, you can directly go over and beat him up. At the same time, you must also accept challenges from anyone. The event is a solo mode, so teams are not allowed, and surrendering is not allowed. The only way to exit the event is to be defeated. During the battle, there will be a total of 100 Earth Immortal teachers who will release their divine senses to monitor the entire battle situation, so there's no chance for you to cheat." Oh my God! When Lin heard this, his legs, which had regained some feeling, became limp again. This event was actually the rhythm of 50,000 people coming together to fight, and surrendering was not allowed? It was rare for him to be able to gather with his beloved seniors. Could it be that this meeting was to taste the fists of his seniors that they loved so much? Seeing the despair on Lin's face, Su Xiaolan comforted him. "Don't worry, this event isn't as scary as you think it is. Hundreds of teachers will monitor the entire battle situation, and every student will be given a defeat judgment talisman. Once a student is defeated, the talisman will be activated and form a protective shield to defend against all attacks. So I heard that in every year, less than 10 students die in this event. The result of a student's defeat is usually minor injury or disability. And Lin, this is what you meant by not as scary." And Lin looked up at the sky. After a long time, he asked the question he was most concerned about. "Since there are talismans, why do people still die?" "There are many reasons for this," Su Xiaolan replied. "Reason 1. It's because spirit-nurturing stage students don't know how to control their strength when fighting against lower-ranked students. Sometimes, the student dies before the talisman can be activated. Reason 2. They're killed by the shock waves of battle. Reason 3. They accidentally fall down from a mountain peak and die. Reason 4. They accidentally eat some food and are poisoned to death. Reason 5. The more Lin listened, the more terrified he became. This free-for-all battle was too scary. What happened to prosperity, democracy, civility, and harmony? A chill enveloped his body, and the anticipation he had felt in the past had completely vanished. Every free-for-all battle is the time when the school's immortal rankings board is reshuffled. The teachers will reevaluate the rankings based on the student's performance in this event. As long as you enter the school's Immortal Rankings board, you'll receive all sorts of generous rewards. So let's do our best, Su Xiaolan said with a grin. Two shallow dimples appeared on her cheeks, setting off her bright and beautiful smile. In contrast to Su Xiaolan's enthusiasm, Enlin could only laugh drily and nod. Do your best. Among the 50,000 students, only the top 100 students could enter the school's Immortal Rankings board. Those people were basically the top fighters among prodigies. And Lin didn't dare to have any extravagant hopes for them. The weakest person on the Immortal Rankings board this time seemed to be of the 10th stage Dao body. At the top of the Immortal Rankings board were 22 badass cultivators of the Spirit Nurturing stage. If they went to the Celestial Court, they would immediately be listed on the Immortal list and hold positions like generals. For these people, fighting with students of the Dao body stage would be like playing a game. If they weren't careful, they could accidentally kill a student. Thinking of this, Enlin immediately made a decision. The most important thing in the free-for-all battle is participation, as long as you survive. Chapter 18. Early in the morning, tens of thousands of students had already gathered on a white jade plaza. Most of them were prodigies from various sects in the Kingdom of the Nine States. However, they still didn't look relaxed in the face of this free-for-all battle organized by the university. Most of the students secretly glanced at the students with whom they usually had conflicts. These students with whom they usually had conflicts were very likely to be their enemies in this event. After all, this was a rare opportunity to beat someone up in broad daylight. That definitely wouldn't miss this opportunity. The homeroom teachers of each class were doing a head count of the students in their classes. Enlin's homeroom teacher, Flying Sword God, was also present at this moment. The homeroom teacher still had a sword strapped to his waist, and his white robe fluttered in the wind. His handsome and elegant outfit attracted the attention of most of the female students. Even the female students from the neighboring classes were not spared. In the first class, apart from their homeroom teacher, Xianyuan Sheng and Su Qianyun, the two supremely talented prodigies of the university, also attracted the attention of countless students. It was as if they were blessed by the heavens. One was so handsome that he had no friends, while the other was so beautiful that she had no friends. Not only did they have superior looks, but their cultivation aptitude was also so nature-defying. They had already reached the spirit nurturing stage at such a young age. This made countless prodigies feel both envy and jealousy. Enlin had also arrived at the White Jade Plaza early. He saw a sea of students and many new faces that he had never seen before. In the past, because the university was too big, he didn't have much of a concept of 50,000 students. Now that 50,000 students were gathered here, he could directly experience just how awe-inspiring this scene was. Just the aura that these 50,000 students exuded made him feel as if he was standing in the middle of a boundless, raging ocean. After an indeterminate amount of time, a crisp and pleasant voice began to sound in the center of the White Jade Plaza. Now that the head count has been completed, let's welcome Vice Principal Yuhua to give a speech for the opening of the free-for-all battle. And Lin knew that Vice Principal Yuhua was a celestial immortal of the Return to Void stage. Apparently, he also wielded real power in Xiaoxian United University. It could be said that all of the principal's work was done by him. As for the principal of the United University of Cultivation, Enlin had been at this university for several months, but he had never seen him in person. It was said that the headmaster was always on the move. Some unlucky students didn't even have the chance to see the headmaster in person from the time they enrolled to graduation. They could only admire the great headmaster through photos. Vice Principal Yu Hua had a pair of thick, black eyebrows and a thick, black mustache, giving him a very comical appearance. For some reason, when Enlin saw the vice principal of Yuhua, he automatically imagined a set of red and blue overalls in his mind. He looked exactly like Mario. Although the appearance of the vice principal of Yuhua was comical, his opening speech was very shocking. He stood high up in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back. It was a move that only a heaven immortal could use. Upon becoming a celestial immortal, One would be able to develop the power of space, and standing in midair was one of the minor applications of the power of space. The voice of the vice principal of Yuhua wasn't loud, but every word he said seemed to be able to penetrate space and directly enter the ears of the 50,000 students, reaching straight into their souls. This was no longer a simple voice transmission. Instead, he used the power of the law imparting heaven. His words contained a hint of law and Tao. The content of the vice principal of Yuhua's speech was actually very dry and boring. If an ordinary person were to say this, a large number of students would probably fall asleep. However, when these words came out of the mouth of the vice principal of Yuhua, they were like thunder piercing the ears and shocking the hearts of the students. They didn't feel sleepy at all. Instead, they felt that what he said made a lot of sense. For example, if an ordinary person were to tell you not to drink freshly boiled water because it would burn your tongue, when you heard this, you would definitely slap the person in the face without hesitation. You would think to yourself, "Isn't this nonsense?" However, if the vice principal of Yuhua were to tell you not to drink freshly boiled water because it would burn your tongue, you would suddenly come to a realization. The temperature of the boiling water was more than 60 degrees higher than the temperature of the mouth. If you drank it directly, the cells of the tongue would be damaged by the high temperature of the boiling water. Then, the receptors on the tongue would produce a pain current. The pain current would be transmitted to the central nervous system. The central nervous system that received the information would then cause the person to feel the pain of burning the tongue. Then you would sigh, as expected of the vice principal of Yuhua. What a reasonable speech. Every word he said was the truth. Just like that, the 50,000 students listened to the opening speech of the vice principal of Yuhua in a daze for 2 hours. After coming to his senses, Enlin made a summary of the 2-hour speech that he had given. The free-for-all battle event would be held in the forest of 1,000 peaks, which had a radius of 100 miles. It would last for 3 days. During the event, only one person was allowed to move around. No pills were allowed, and no talisman treasures were allowed. There were a total of 108 teachers in charge of monitoring the battlefield. Once a student was found to have violated the rules, the student's right to participate in the event would be immediately disqualified and sent to the campus detention room for a month of labor reform. The purpose of this event was to let the students experience the cruelty of the cultivation world in advance between beating and being beaten. They would experience the law of the world where the strongest would be the king. They would urge the students to work hard to improve their own cultivation. After Enlin finished his summary, he had a look of amazement on his face. He didn't expect that the vice principal of Yuhua's speech would actually take a whole 2 hours. What was even more frightening was that he was actually very excited during the entire speech. He sighed softly. It seems like the principal's speech skills are really amazing. After hearing Enlin's words, Su Xiaolan, who was at the side, nodded repeatedly. It was obvious that she was very much in agreement with what Enlin had said. After the principal finished his speech, the Flying Sword God distributed a golden talisman to every student in the class and instructed them to stick the talisman tightly on their bodies. The talisman was the legendary Defeat Judgment Talisman. Before the end of the event, the students would only be able to leave the battlefield if the talisman was activated. After all the students had put on the Defeat Judgment Talisman, the vice principal of Yuhua spoke again. His impassioned words once again entered everyone's ears. Now, I announce that the battle for freedom of Xioshin United University has officially begun. I will now activate the array formation. When the time comes, every student will be transported to the third forbidden area of the school, the Forest of 1,000 Peaks. Your landing location will be random. Now, please enjoy this wonderful event. After he finished speaking, the entire White Jade Plaza was suddenly enveloped by a white screen of light. Then, an enormous and extremely complicated array formation suddenly appeared on the ground and began to operate rapidly. Enlin only felt the world spin. Then, his vision darkened, and he directly fainted. After an unknown period of time, he slowly woke up. After opening his eyes, what came into view was a mountain peak that pierced the clouds like a sharp sword. Around the mountain peak, was a yellow land. There were few green plants on this land, and most of the ground was covered with gravel. It gave off a desolate and cold feeling. And Lin stood up from the ground and looked up at the sky. He noticed that there was a light blue barrier in the sky. That was probably the barrier that the teachers had set up to limit the range of activity. The students could only move within the range of the barrier. At this moment, a ding sound came from Lin's mind. This familiar feeling, it's a system. And Lin quickly opened the God of War system and looked at the system interface with some excitement. Huh, the special missions column was glowing? This special missions column had always been gray to Lin before. He didn't expect it to be glowing now. He curiously opened the special missions column, and then a series of words appeared before his eyes. Detected that the host has entered the forest of 1,000 peaks. Now assigning the following mission. The host must become a member of the new immortal ranking board in this event. Mission success. 1 chance to draw an artifact. Mission failure. Continuous diarrhea for 10 days. The severity is the side effect of consuming the mountain soul essence. Note, this mission cannot be rejected. And Lin blankly stared at the special missions in front of him. For some reason, his eyes were a little moist. Become a member of the new immortal ranking board? Competing with 50,000 genius cultivators for the top 100, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I can't do it. Continuous diarrhea for 10 days? That's even more terrible. And Lin, who had experienced continuous diarrhea for 3 days, knew very well how terrible this kind of diarrhea was. Make him have continuous diarrhea for 10 days? It would be better to just let him die. Chapter 19. After a while, Lin finally accepted this cruel reality. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well struggle a little before he died. The forest of 1,000 peaks was very monotonous. There was yellow soil and gravel everywhere, and even the thousands of sword-like mountain peaks were bare. Sigh, is there nothing else to do in this activity apart from fighting? Lin crossed his hands behind his head and walked forward aimlessly. 50,000 people were spread out in the forest of 1,000 peaks. If he wanted to meet another student, he could only keep moving forward like this. After walking for a short while, Lin heard the sounds of fighting coming from up ahead. The sound of magic spells kept ringing out, as well as the occasional scream. When Lin rushed over, he was greeted by the sight that greeted him. A student had already fallen to the ground, and a golden barrier had appeared on his body. Yeah, is that what it looks like when the defeat judgment seal is activated? Lin hid behind a rock and snuck a peek at the battle taking place. Damn it, this is too miserable. Look at that guy on the ground. He's been slashed a few times, right? He's only able to activate the defeat judgment seal with such heavy injuries? And Lin became more and more alarmed as he watched. Too scary. This activity is too scary. He already had thoughts of running away. At that moment, many strange runes appeared on the golden barrier. Immediately after, that injured guy suddenly disappeared. It seemed that he had been teleported out of the forest of 1,000 peaks. The victorious man smiled proudly as he brandished his crimson longsword in the air. Then, he looked towards another direction. And Lin's heart sank at that moment, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Student behind the rock, stop hiding. I've already found you. The man was looking in the direction wherein Lin was hiding. When Lin heard this, he had no other choice but to brace himself and appear in front of that person. The man with the red longsword didn't have an outstanding appearance, but he was very tall and strong, giving off a feeling of power. When he saw Lin appear, he said in surprise, I think I've seen you somewhere before. You've seen me before? And Lin looked at the unfamiliar man in front of him, unable to recall where he had seen him before. You're Lin, a first-year student, right? The man asked. That's right. And Lin was a little confused, but he still replied. Hearing Lin's answer, the man immediately laughed. It really is you. You look exactly the same as the portrait in the university's celebrity list. There's no mistaking it. And Lin was slightly taken aback upon hearing this. University celebrity list? Am I famous now? Although he didn't know what was going on, he still felt happy when he heard the man's words. However, Lin was completely dumbstruck by the man's next sentence. I wanted to beat you up a long time ago. I didn't expect the heavens to open their eyes and send you to me so quickly. Ha! The man was clearly in a good mood. I say, big brother, I didn't offend you, did I? And Lin's heart was racing. What's going on with this big guy who suddenly appeared? Why does he look like he hates me so much? Most importantly, I don't know him at all. Cut the crap. I'm a second year, class 7's Li Zhengyang, Anlin junior brother. Please enlighten me. After saying that, the strong man pointed the red long sword at Anlin, and a shocking aura erupted from his body. Anlin was dumbfounded as he looked at the strong man. F***CK. How did I get to know a sophomore? And this extremely terrifying aura. Is this F***king murderous intent? Before Anlin could come back to his senses, another man appeared not far away. Hey, you're Anlin? The man walked over slowly and looked at Anlin. Anlin looked at the young man, who had a heartwarming smile on his face. For some reason, Anlin felt an indescribable sense of security from his smile. Yes, I'm Anlin. Anlin immediately admitted, as if he had found a life-saving straw. He had already imagined the scene of the man who gave him a sense of security, helping him, and then beating Li Xingyang to the ground. Hee, it's really you. The man who had a spring breeze-like smile on his face suddenly turned gloomy and said coldly, Third year, class 26 Zhongwen, Anlin junior brother. Please enlighten me. After saying that, Zhongwen took out his meteor hammer, and an astonishing aura erupted from his body. Anlin was stupefied once again and stood rooted to the ground. What the hell is going on? What kind of crazy thing did I do? Right at this moment, the figure of another student appeared in front of them. Wow, what's going on here? Why is it so lively? A skinny, scholarly man walked over with a curious expression. Then his footsteps faltered. Are you Anlin? Anlin's eyes were a little moist as he denied. Student, you're mistaken. I'm not Anlin. Ha! I've read a lot of books. Don't try to fool me. You look exactly the same as the portrait on the university's Who's Who rankings. The scholar exclaimed with a joyful expression. After saying that, he took out a fan that glowed with a metallic luster, and a powerful aura erupted from his body. Fifth year, class 90's Chen Shubao, Anlin junior brother. Please enlighten me. Anlin felt like he'd been trampled by 10,000 F***king horses, and he didn't even have the energy to speak. Say, what the hell is the university famous list? Speaking of which, do I have a grudge against you seniors? From first year to fifth year, there's only one fourth-year senior left. Hurry up and come. Don't force my obsessive-compulsive disorder to death. Right at this moment, a sweet female voice sounded from behind Anlin. Are you Anlin? Anlin turned around in a daze. Then he saw an adorable young girl in a pink dress looking at him with a smile. Just as he was about to be bullied by a bunch of grown men, a beautiful young girl suddenly appeared. For Anlin, this was a different kind of relief. Before he could say anything, the adorable young girl nodded to herself. When I saw your clothes, I felt a sense of familiarity. Now that I've seen your face, I'm sure it's you. After saying that, the young girl pulled out a dagger that glinted with a cold light from her pink dress. Fifth year, class 9 Xia Shiyao, student Anlin. Please enlighten me. Anlin sniffled, and he felt a little suffocated. So it turned out that his hatred wasn't limited to guys. Even girls wanted to beat him up. Say, just what kind of crazy things have I done? Why don't I have any recollection of it? Did I lose my memory? For students that Anlin didn't recognize at all were aiming their weapons at him with murderous intent. At this special moment, Anlin recalled something that Su Xiaolan had once told him. Don't worry, there are less than 10 students who accidentally die in the free-for-all battle. Perhaps he was the lucky one among the less than 10 students. Just as Anlin was in despair, another voice sounded. Are you Anlin? Anlin. Chapter 20. Hearing this familiar opening, Anlin had already given up on treatment. He said with a face full of despair, Do you also want me to teach you? Teach. The man's expression faltered. Then, he glanced at the murderous students around him and seemed to have understood something. Only then did Anlin turn his gaze toward the man who had suddenly appeared. After seeing the man's appearance, a surprised expression appeared on his face. Aha! Sorry, I got the wrong person. The man chuckled and then turned around. Then he sprinted at the speed of a 100-meter sprint, leaving only a cloud of dust in his wake. Beside the man was a white-furred dog that ran even faster than him. Zhao Huayin, don't leave me in the lurch. Enlin yelled in despair. The man who had suddenly appeared was the friend that Enlin had met in the detention room. At this moment, he slipped away very quickly and disappeared from Enlin's field of vision in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, Zhongwan, who was wielding a meteor hammer, chuckled. Enlin Jr., brother, even if you scream your lungs out, no one will come to save you. Be a good boy and spar with me. I clearly came first. First come, first serve, I'll go first. Li Jingyang, who was wielding a crimson sword, stared at Enlin and was already itching to make a move. What do you mean you'll go first? Once you go, you'll cause Enlin Jr. Brothers' defeat barrier to appear. How are we supposed to fight then? Chen Shu Bao was displeased. But if we go together, we'll immediately be disqualified. At that time, we'll even be locked up for violating the rules, Xia Shiyao said worriedly. At this moment, Enlin was like a little white rabbit waiting to be slaughtered, hiding in a corner and trembling in fear. How about this? We'll each state the reason why we want to teach Enlin Jr. Brother. We'll give that opportunity to whoever has the most suitable reason. What do you guys think? Chen Shu Bao, who had a strong scholarly aura, suggested. Hearing Chen Shu Bao's suggestion, Enlin cried tears of joy. He finally had a chance to know why he had died. He felt so blessed. Chen Shu Bao's suggestion was unanimously agreed upon by the other students. Thus, they all turned their gazes toward Enlin as if they wanted to eat him alive. Chen Shu Bao looked at Enlin with a reluctant expression. When I first entered the university, I was of the 5th stage Dao body. Because my rank wasn't high, I was assigned to class 90. I have no complaints about this. For the past 4 years, I've worked hard and fought with all my might. Now, I've reached the 8th stage Dao body. Even among students of the same grade, I'm considered average. However, a few months ago, I heard that a new student named Enlin entered the school with a rank of 0th stage Dao body. He was actually assigned to class 1. The higher the ranking, the more abundant the teaching resources. What right does he have to occupy a spot in class 1 and occupy the teaching resources of other outstanding students? Just because he has a true God's letter of recommendation? This matter is a huge insult to us, the students who are struggling at the bottom of the class. After finding out about this, I made a decision. I'm definitely going to find a chance to beat up Enlin. That backdoor entrant is so annoying. After saying this, Chen Shu Bao smiled at Enlin. It was a smile of someone whose dream was about to come true. Seeing that smile, Enlin felt a chill in his heart. So, this enemy was recruited by the strongest backdoor entrant. Immediately afterward, Li Jingyang also opened his mouth. Sigh, every time I talk about this, my heart aches. On a small path in the school, I met a girl. I fell in love with her the moment I laid eyes on her. She was so beautiful, so noble, like a phoenix soaring in the sky. That day, I confessed to her. Then, she rejected me mercilessly. However, how could I, Li Jingyang, be someone who would give up so easily? I began to pursue her relentlessly. I wanted to use the flames of love to influence her. However, a few days later, she told me a cruel truth. That is, she already has a Dao partner. This news made me feel as if I had fallen into an icy abyss. My life sank into darkness. Although I didn't want to believe it, she often went to school with that man. They ate together. They looked very intimate, and they talked and laughed together. This forced me to accept this truth. But I couldn't accept it. What was so good about that man? What did he do to deserve the favor of the goddess in my heart? This matter became an obstacle in my heart. Therefore, I swore that I would find an opportunity to beat that man up. Oh yes, the girl I like is called Su Xiaolan. And Lin, I really don't understand why she would choose you as her Dao partner. After he finished speaking, Li Jingyang's scarlet sword spewed out raging flames, just like his furious expression. Hearing this, Enlin was dumbfounded. He felt like a mouthful of blood was accumulating in his chest. Dao partner? Su Xiaolan? If that man did not mention this, and Lin would not have known that he had been used as a shield by Su Xiaolan. Big brother, it's a misunderstanding. This is all a misunderstanding. And Lin cried out. How could Li Zhengyang, who was in a fit of rage, listen to Lin's explanation? And Lin's words would only be interpreted by him as an excuse to avoid battle. I didn't expect Lin to already have a Dao partner. After Li Zhengyang finished, Zhongwen also began to fly into a rage. You already have a Dao partner. How could you be so flirtatious with our university's #1 goddess, Junior Su Qianyan? Every time I see Junior Su Qianyan's portrait on the university's celebrity list, my heart beats rapidly. I admire her very much. Her beauty has completely conquered me. But why would such a cold and aloof Su Qianyan often stay in the classroom with a man after school? I really can't tolerate this kind of thing. And that man actually has a Dao partner. Phew. And Lin, I will not live under the same sky as you. Zhongwen's meteor hammer began to shake. It was obvious that he could not endure the hunger and thirst. And Lin's heart was very tired. He only stayed in the classroom with Su Qianyan because he wanted to help her learn Mandarin and English. Speaking of which, why did this always attract jealousy and hatred? At this moment, Xia Shiyao also began to denounce Lin's crimes. On a beautiful spring afternoon, I prepared early to rush to the cafeteria to receive my favorite limited edition strawberry dessert. It was a first-come, first-served dessert. Then I suddenly heard a piece of news. It was said that after school, 2 students were going to have an earth-shattering battle next to the flower bed. This battle successfully attracted my attention. So, I reluctantly gave up my favorite and went to watch the highly anticipated battle. Then, I saw a battle that I could not forget for a long time. After I went back, I washed my eyes many times, but I still could not forget that battle. And Lin, tears welled up in Xia Shiyao's eyes as she glared at Lin angrily. Because of your battle, not only did I miss out on the limited edition strawberry dessert, but I also dirted my eyes. And Lin, there must be an end between us. And Lin was about to cry. Why did his battle with Liu Debao attract so much hatred? Junior Xia Shiyao, the strawberry dessert is not a big deal. He stole the love of my life. Li Zhengyang said. No, as expected, the most powerful backdoor entrant hurts the most. Chen Shubao said solemnly. The #1 goddess of the school being stuck in cow dung is the most devastating thing. Zhongwen retorted. I don't care, and Lin must be beaten up by me today. Otherwise, I won't be able to take this lying down. Xia Shiyao was relentless. Just like that, the 4 students continued to denounce Lin for his numerous crimes. The matter of who should beat up Lin was once again embroiled in a dispute. Waves of terrifying killing intent permeated the air, and Lin's eyes became misty with tears. Only now did he realize just how heinous he was. How about I commit seppuku right now as an apology? And Lin could no longer see any hope. He could only hope that the 4 of them would give him a quick death. Chapter 21. Above Lin, outside the faint blue enchantment barrier, a gigantic book hovered in midair. A tall girl with slightly curly hair and a pair of red-rimmed glasses was lying on top of the book. She crossed her long, shapely legs in black stockings and looked down at the ground with a smile on her face. TSK. These kids down there are really interesting. And Lin, as the representative of the mortal studies, don't embarrass the mortal studies. At least, lose with dignity? The girl's lips curled up as she stared at the students down below. This girl was Lin's mortal studies teacher, Madagascar. She was in charge of overseeing the battles in this area. And Lin was surrounded by a few aggressive students, which made her feel quite amused. Then, an even more interesting scene happened. The 4 students, in order to get a chance to fight against Lin, began to argue incessantly. At this moment, the little white rabbit and Lin couldn't help but speak. I think you guys can decide who will fight me in the end by sparring. As soon as Lin said this, the scene suddenly quieted down. That's right, why didn't I think of that? Zhongwen clapped his hands together as he came to a sudden realization. That's a good idea. If we can't solve the problem with words, we can only solve it with force. Li Xingyang's eyes also lit up. Those closely involved can't see clearly. Anlin Jr. brother finally came up with a good idea. Chun Shu Bao nodded in agreement. Then let's draw lots to decide who will fight. Xia Shiyao was already eager to try. Just like that, the four of them began to draw lots happily, and Lin hid to the side. In fact, he still had something that he didn't dare to say, and that was, didn't you guys think of using the method of drawing lots to decide who will spar with me? Of course, as long as he wasn't tired of living, he wouldn't say this out loud. Just like that, the sparring began. The first round was first year, Class 9, Xia Shiyao versus third year, Class 26, Class 3, Zhong 1. As soon as the battle began, both of them erupted with an incomparably shocking aura. Both of them were of the 8th stage Dao body, so their ranks were equal. If they wanted to determine a victor, they would have to use their full strength in order to have a chance. Therefore, the battle was very intense as soon as it started. Zhong Wen's meteor hammer carried the force of 1,000 caddies, and every strike was able to create a deep pit in the ground. He was confident that as long as the meteor hammer hit Xia Shiyao once, the battle would be over. However, Xia Shiyao was an agile cultivator. Her petite body moved quickly, leaving pink afterimages on the ground. This made it difficult for Zhong Wen to pinpoint her exact location. The meteor hammer whistled over, but Xia Shiyao nimbly dodged it. Then, she quickly moved forward, closing in on Zhong Wen. Hee, senior, your speed is too slow. Xia Shiyao squinted her eyes and smiled, revealing her cute little canine teeth. Then, she mercilessly stabbed the dagger in her hand toward Zhong Wen. A cold glint flashed past. The dagger was abnormally sharp, and with a simple stab, it completely pierced into Zhong Wen's chest. Ah! Zhong Wen screamed in pain and stumbled back. Xia Shiyao pulled out the dagger, and blood splattered everywhere. She quickly pursued, and the sharp dagger once again transformed into a deadly cold glint, stabbing toward Zhong Wen's body. Blood splattered everywhere, and Zhong Wen screamed in pain. In just a short while, he was injured in many places, and blood stained his shirt. The speed of the girl in front of him was so fast that Zhong Wen felt despair. No matter how he counterattacked, he was unable to hit her. He could only passively endure her stabbing. And Lin, who was watching the battle from the sidelines, was terrified. Oh my God, classmate Xia Shiyao is going to kill someone. The scene of a petite and adorable female classmate transforming into a bloodthirsty killer, mercilessly chasing after a senior and slashing at him, had already been deeply engraved in Lin's mind. In the end, a protective golden light appeared around Senior Zhong Wen, indicating that he had been defeated. Thank you for letting me win, Senior. Xia Shiyao sheathed her dagger and reverted back to her cute little girl form. She clasped her hands behind her back and grinned. Zhong Wen covered his bleeding body with a hand and looked at the young girl in front of him with a bitter expression. He sighed lightly and didn't say anything. Just like that, he was teleported out of the spell formation. Xia Shiyao turned around to look at Lin. She raised an eyebrow at him in a provocative manner, and then turned to look at another battle. Goosebumps rose all over Lin's body when he was stared at by her. There was a voice roaring in his heart. No, please don't let her be the final winner. And Lin would rather be knocked unconscious by a meteor hammer than be stabbed repeatedly by a small knife. This was too terrifying. The battle between Chun Shu Bao and Li Zhengyang also came to an end at this moment. Li Zhengyang didn't win this battle easily. His shirt was already in tatters, and streaks of blood appeared on his solid muscles. He was also panting heavily because he had overexerted his strength. And Lin saw Li Zhengyang's state and cursed in his heart. Xia Shiyao had defeated Zhong Wen in a crushing manner. Now that she was up against Li Zhengyang, wouldn't she continue to crush him? Li Zhengyang was also slightly surprised when he realized that his opponent was Xia Shiyao. He clearly didn't expect her to be the winner. Soon, the battle between Xia Shiyao and Li Zhengyang erupted. Li Zhengyang was much more impressive than Lin had imagined. The battle didn't end in a crushing defeat. Even though Li Zhengyang wasn't in a very good state, he was still a 9th stage Dao body. Coupled with his exquisite and domineering swordsmanship, he was able to hold his own against Xia Shiyao for the time being. Xia Shiyao's strange and unpredictable dagger was unable to break through Li Zhengyang's swordsmanship defense. This made her a little anxious. Sudden shadow stab. When the dagger stabbed toward Li Zhengyang, a black shadow appeared on the blade. The shadow suddenly elongated and stabbed toward Li Zhengyang. This was Xia Shiyao's secret ultimate technique. She transformed the shadow of the dagger into a blade. The speed and power of this technique were more than twice as fast as before. Using this technique expended a lot of her spirit power. Thus, from now on, she had to end the battle as soon as possible. Li Zhengyang couldn't dodge in time and was stabbed by the shadow blade. The shadow blade pierced through his body. Li Zhengyang didn't retreat. Instead, he took a step forward and slashed towards Xia Shiyao with raging flames revolving around his scarlet sword. Explosive flame slash. Boom! The flames exploded and pulverized the ground within a radius of 10 feet. A petite figure leaped out from the smoke. Her pink clothes were slightly tattered from the explosion, and her body was also covered in burns. She appeared to be in an extremely sorry state. You actually dare to tear my beautiful, colorful dress. Very well. Xia Shiyao spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes were cold as she raised her dagger and charged toward the man in the center of the smoke. Immediately afterward, there was another series of explosions. Explosive flame slash. Sudden shadow stab. Boom, boom, boom. And Lin saw the two figures intertwining. That kind of reckless fighting style started to appear on their bodies. Xia Shiyao would rather be slashed by a sword than stab Li Zhengyang's body. Li Zhengyang was even more reckless as he continuously used explosive flame slash on Xia Shiyao. And Lin stared blankly at the scene in front of him and sighed, "Heavens, these two people are crazy." Finally, after another explosion, Xia Shiyao spat out another mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. A golden light screen appeared beside her. She had an unwilling expression on her face and wanted to get up and fight again. However, at this moment, the teleportation function of the array started to activate. Her figure suddenly disappeared from the ground. The final winner is still me. A brawny man bathed in blood walked out with a victorious attitude and laughed complacently. Li Zhengyang walked in front of Lin. His body was swaying, and he coughed out blood from time to time. "Hey, senior, can you still do it?" And Lin looked at the senior in front of him who looked like he was about to die. His heart was racing. How the F***CK was he injured to this extent? And there was still no defeat rating? A man can't say no. Li Zhengyang waved his sleeve and pointed his red longsword at Lin. "Come, my love rival. I'm not in a good state right now, so I can't slowly beat you up. I'll use my strongest sword technique and finish you off in one move. And Lin, take this explosive flame slash." Li Zhengyang slashed his longsword at Lin, and the flaming sword ray pounced toward Lin. Because of the depletion of energy, the power of the sword ray was much weaker than before. However, Li Zhengyang was confident that this attack was more than enough to deal with the useless Lin. And Lin didn't want to say anything. He used a mountain quaking fist on him. The golden fist shadow, with a majestic power, collided with the flaming sword slash. Then, under Li Zhengyang's incredulous gaze, the flaming sword ray was shattered by the golden fist and landed on his body. Li Zhengyang was sent flying by the punch. The huge force of the punch made him feel like all the bones in his body were shattered. He spat out a mouthful of blood and rolled on the ground. "How is this possible? How can you be so strong?" Li Zhengyang looked at Lin in shock, unable to accept this fact. And Lin also stared down at his own fist with a shocked expression. Even he felt that the power of this punch was a little too strong. However, Lin quickly came back to his senses. He knew that there was only one thing he should do at this time. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Li Zhengyang with a calm expression on his face. He said slowly, "So this is all you've got? I'm so disappointed. This is such a boring battle." And Lin looked down at Li Zhengyang and shook his head regretfully, revealing a king's contemptuous gaze. "You!" Li Zhengyang's blood rushed to his head, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. The golden shield finally appeared on Li Zhengyang's body. "I can't accept this." Li Jingyang's face was full of indignation. Why did he finally get the chance to beat up Enlin? But in the end, he was beaten up by Enlin. If he had a fair battle with Enlin, this would definitely not be the result. Li Jingyang would probably never know that when Enlin proposed that battle plan, he had already expected this result. Li Jingyang finally disappeared from the ground. Seeing this, the corners of Enlin's mouth curled up slightly. He said, "Hee hee, I thought there would be another fierce battle. Who would have thought that the plan would go so smoothly? Do you really think I'm a little rabbit waiting to be slaughtered? What a joke. If I really didn't have any intention of resisting, I would have already disappeared when you guys were fighting. You have to know that my rank is at least the 7th stage Dao body. Even if I can't beat him, I can at least run away." Enlin experienced the exhilaration of pretending to be a rabbit to prey on a tiger. He was elated at the thought of taking the kill. Right at this moment, a voice sounded behind him. "Huh, are you Enlin?" Chapter 22. Hearing this sentence again, Enlin felt like he was about to go crazy. What was going on with this ghostly cycle? Ah! Enlin raised his fist and smashed it behind him. "Spare me, big brother Enlin." Seeing the terrifying wind pressure in Enlin's fist, the man almost fell to his knees. Hearing that familiar voice, Enlin's fist paused, and there was a look of surprise on his face. "Lu Debao, it's you?" The newcomer was slightly plump and had a harmless look on his face. He was looking at Enlin excitedly. He was none other than Lu Debao, the one who got to know Enlin through a fight. In the sky, Madagascar sat on a gigantic book. Her slender hands danced about as she recorded some data in a notebook. Li Jingyang, combat capability, 120, achievement score, 40, note, defeated by Enlin. Enlin, combat capability, 100, achievement score, 28. As Madagascar used her finger to record Enlin's data, the corners of her lips curled up, and a faint smile appeared on her face. "Ah, this brat is surprisingly hardworking. He actually managed to turn the tables." She adjusted her decorative red-rimmed glasses, and her slender legs swayed slightly. There was a thoughtful expression on her face. "I remember that he was of the Zeroth stage Dao body when he entered the university, right? However, judging from the aura he exuded during the battle just now, he's already of the 7th stage Dao body. Such a terrifying rate of progression. Is he using hacks?" Right at this moment, Lu Debao suddenly appeared behind Enlin. There were also a dozen or so students following behind Lu Debao. "Haha, these people aren't here to cause trouble for Enlin again, are they? Does Enlin have the constitution to attract trouble?" Seeing this amusing scene, Madagascar smiled and looked toward Enlin again. Enlin's eyelids twitched when he saw the dozen or so unfamiliar students behind Lu Debao. "What are you doing here? You're not here to pick a fight with me again, are you?" Enlin asked. Lu Debao hurriedly waved his hands. "Of course not, big brother, and you're so powerful that I wouldn't be able to defeat you even if I wanted to." What he said was the truth. When he first arrived, he saw Enlin display his invincible might and beat Li Jingyang to the ground with a single punch. That extremely visually impactful battle of immortal techniques caused him to be extremely shocked, and no matter how confident he was, he didn't dare fight the current Enlin. A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. Lu Debao shook his head and sighed. Enlin's strength had suddenly become so strong. Lu Debao was both surprised and envious. He wished he could be in Enlin's place. Enlin heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that Lu Debao wasn't here to pick a fight with him. Right at this moment, the system beeped with a ding. "Congratulations, you have successfully defeated an enemy who is at or above the 8th stage Dao body. You have now broken through to the 8th stage Dao body." Enlin felt the strength in his body increase drastically. At this moment, all the muscles and bones in his body also became purer and stronger. The change in the strength in his body made him extremely happy, and many thoughts began to form in his mind. In the system's view, landing the killing blow was also considered as defeating the enemy. This was truly good news for him. Next, he had to continue landing the killing blow. "I'm definitely going to be the king of killing blows." The reason why Lin was so eager to land the killing blow was because in the rank section of the system, the rank advancement mission had changed to the following requirements. 9th stage Dao body condition. Defeat 10 enemies who are at or above the 9th stage Dao body head-on. Defeating 10 enemies who were at or above the 9th stage Dao body was something that Lin didn't even dare to think about in the past. However, there was now hope. If he couldn't beat them, then there was no need to face them head-on. He just had to deal with the low amount of damage. Just as Lin's imagination was running wild, Lu DeBeo spoke again. Big Brotherin, after seeing your invincible might, I have a request to make of you. Tell me, what is it? Lin was a bit curious. The free-for-all battle prohibited team battles. Under such circumstances, what could he do to help? It's like this. Lu DeBeo cleared his throat and said with a solemn expression, I hope that Big Brother can defeat me. Lin, in the end, it's still a fight? Lu DeBeo had a heroic expression on his face. Everyone has died since ancient times. To die by my hands, I will have no regrets in this life. Lin grimaced. He finally understood what Lu DeBeo was trying to say. You want to borrow my hand to force out the defeat judgment seal so that you can escape from this damn place, right? Brother, you can see through it but not say it. Lu DeBeo said with a bitter expression, I'm just a punching bag in this place with my cultivation base. As he said this, Lu DeBeo glanced at the dozen or so students behind him. Those who are too weak can't force out the golden light of the defeat judgment seal. As for those who are too strong, their attacks are too vicious. They might cripple us with a single move. If that happens, we won't be able to get out of bed for half a month. Now that I've met Brotherin, the heavens have opened their eyes. Now, I just hope that you can control your strength and force out the golden light of the brothers behind me and me. Lu DeBeo's eyes shone brightly. He held onto Lin's hand with a pleading expression on his face. Lin took a deep breath. He really didn't know what kind of expression he should use to face this group of people. They were lining up to deliver their heads to him. Would he accept it or not? Just like that, Madagascar, who was above the array formation, once again saw an unbelievable scene. He saw the students lining up to fight with Lin. Then they were all instantly killed by Lin. First year, class 100, Lu DeBeo. Student Lin, please enlighten me. Lu DeBeo shouted as he charged forward. Then, he was sent flying by Lin's mountain-quaking fist, which had only used 1/10 of his strength. Lu DeBeo was hit by the huge force. He spat out blood and fell to the ground. The huge difference in strength instantly triggered the defeat judgment seal. Enveloped by the golden light, Lu DeBeo looked at Lin gratefully and revealed a blissful expression. First year, class 100, Li Yuanqing. Student Lin, please enlighten me. Then, Li Yuanqing was sent flying by a punch. Enveloped by the golden light, he looked at Lin with a blissful expression. First year, class 99, Song Jingwu. Student Lin, please enlighten me. Madagascar slapped his forehead. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the scene unfolding on the ground. She hesitated for a moment. In the end, she continued to increase Lin's achievement points. Every time he defeated a student, Lin's achievement points would increase by 5 points. There was no helping it. Fighting 5 trash was also a resource. Finally, when Lin defeated the last student, his data became combat strength, 100, achievement points, 108. The new round of Immortal Rankings board evaluation was based on the weighting of combat strength and achievement points to determine the ranking. Now, Lin's combat strength hadn't increased, but his achievement points had increased by leaps and bounds. This was all thanks to Lu DeBeo and the others who had lined up to kill him. Student Lin's luck is really not bad. However, if he continues to move forward, Madagascar looked at Lin's advancing figure with a look of anticipation on his face. After defeating a dozen students, Lin had expended a lot of his strength. He planned to find a place to rest and recover his strength before continuing. Looking into the distance, he saw a small mountain in front of him. The mountain was covered by a green forest. It was very rare to see a place with green vegetation in this barren area. What the forest of 1,000 peaks lacked the most was food and water. When Lin saw the small mountain, he knew he would have food and water. Just like that, he started to walk toward the small mountain excitedly. Chapter 23. After Lin's rank rose to the 8th stage Tao body, he could also cultivate the Earth Element Cultivation Method. Stage 1 Earth Lotus Supreme Skill. Condition: meditate atop the Black Rock Peak for 1 day. The Black Rock Peak was a very famous mountain in the forest of 1,000 peaks. It was said that the mountain was pitch black and smooth. If one wanted to climb it barehanded, the chances of success were 0. The only way to reach the top of the Black Rock Peak was to fly up. Sigh, if only I knew how to fly on a sword. And Lin had a bitter expression on his face. Sword kinesis flight was a flying technique that could only be mastered by cultivators of the spirit nurturing stage and above. His rank wasn't high enough, so even if he grasped the basic theoretical knowledge, he still wouldn't be able to fly. Since he couldn't fly, then he'd set aside the cultivation of the Earth Lotus Supreme skill for the time being, and Lin stopped thinking about the system. The first thing he had to do now was to reach the small mountain in front of him. Of course, there was another more important thing, and that was to find a target to land the killing blow on. Only in this free-for-all battle would he have a chance to land the killing blow. If it was outside, there wouldn't be so many people with low health left for him to fight. Soon, Lin discovered a senior who was low on health. He had rushed over after hearing the sounds of battle, and as soon as he arrived, he saw the senior who had just won the battle. Just like that, Lin jumped out without any hesitation. After a brief self-introduction, he started chasing after that upperclassman and beating him up. That's right, he was chasing after him. The senior knew that he wasn't in a good state and was no match for Lin, so he chose to run away. However, how could Lin let such a juicy piece of meat escape from his grasp? He chased after him without hesitation. Hey, eat my fist. Lin caught up to the senior and threw a mountain-quaking fist. The mountain-quaking fist was very powerful, and it instantly blasted apart the immortal spell cast by the senior. Then, the residual force of the fist sent the senior flying. The senior spat out blood as he rolled on the ground, and a golden protective light began to appear around his body. A smug smile appeared on Lin's face. Lin, F*CKU, where's your integrity? The senior cursed loudly. He had never seen such a shameless person. Lin was completely unmoved by his upperclassman's words. In order to complete this system's mission, he had already tossed aside all of his moral integrity. When the pitiful senior was teleported out, he began to check his system. Quest completion progress 1/10. Lin nodded with satisfaction and continued his hunting. He felt that his luck was pretty good. Not far from the hill, he heard the sounds of fighting again. Lin cautiously approached the place where the battle was taking place. The nearby Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi was violently surging, and waves of terrifying energy collided with each other, causing him to be extremely shocked. The two people fighting this time seemed a little strong, and Lin hid behind a huge rock and poked his head out, secretly peeking into the distance. When he saw the two fighting, he was dumbfounded, binding of light. The pink-haired girl waved her staff and said in a melodious voice. A circular halo of light shot out from the staff in her hand. This halo of light was extremely fast, and it instantly trapped a red-skinned man inside. Roar! The man roared, and red flames erupted from his body as he tried to break free from the halo of light. The flames on his body soared into the sky and continued to spread. Even Lin, who was watching the battle from behind the huge rock, could feel the waves of heat rushing toward him. The pink-haired girl stretched out her palms facing the man from afar. The six-feathered staff hovered in front of her and rotated rapidly, accumulating an extremely terrifying energy. My combo is invincible. Take this, final spark. The girl shouted softly, and an extremely powerful beam of energy shot out from the staff. This beam of light was like a laser cannon, directly piercing over 100 meters, dispersing the red-skinned man's flames and penetrating his chest, leaving a long trench in the ground. After the red-skinned man was penetrated by the beam of light, he couldn't even speak. He vomited blood and fell to the ground. Immediately afterward, a golden protective barrier began to appear on his body. The red-skinned man had been defeated, but the pink-haired girl didn't show much joy on her face. She seemed to have thought of something, and she slapped her head in distress. Aya, I should have used Q. ER. 3 skills in a row. Am I really still a lousy person? And Lin was extremely dumbfounded as he watched from the side. Such an intense scene made him immediately think of a game called League of Legends from Earth. The girl was extremely beautiful, and her graceful figure was adorned with extremely luxurious clothes. She had short pink hair, a pink and purple sailor suit, white stockings, and even held a 6-feathered staff. This girl was cosplaying as Lux, the magical girl, right? No, she actually knew how to use skills like Binding of Light and Final Spark. This was already beyond the scope of cosplay. This was a F***king living, breathing magical girl. And Lin felt his throat go dry. He didn't want to pursue the matter of why such a strange girl would appear here anymore. He broke out in a cold sweat as he watched this battle. His only thought now was to leave this godforsaken place as soon as possible. And Lin still had some self-awareness. That terrifying pressure and that destructive power of the battle. This was definitely a battle between 2 spirit-nurturing stage cultivators. Faced with such an opponent, his chances of successfully landing the killing blow were infinitely close to 0. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Moreover, this magical girl hadn't starved to death yet. She was still alive and kicking after the battle. And Lin gulped and concealed his aura. He stealthily moved into the distance, trying not to make a single sound. However, right at this moment, his body suddenly froze. It was as if his entire body had been bound by some kind of power. He was completely unable to move. It was a dazzling ring of light. It encircled Lin's body and released an extremely powerful binding force. Crap, I've been discovered. A chill ran down Lin's entire body. He sighed in his heart. Why was afraid of really happened? Haha, I was just fretting that there was no one for me to train my skills on, and now you've delivered yourself to my doorstep. The girl's elated voice sounded from behind Lin. This time, I'm definitely going to unleash the complete Q. Triple combo. I can definitely do it. The girl's encouraging voice sounded from behind him again. Triple combo? Hearing this, Lin's eyes welled up with tears. That red-skinned male of the spirit-nurturing stage was half dead after a single Q. Triple combo, and a deal with a puny cultivator of the 8th-stage Tao body like me. She actually has to use such a cruel technique like Q. Triple combo? And Lin sniffled. His intuition told him that if he was hit by that final spark, he would definitely be screwed. Sure enough, there were less than 10 unlucky students who participated in the free-for-all battle event, and he was one of them. Chapter 24. When faced with a life-or-death situation, people would always unleash their limitless potential, and Lin was no exception. When he sensed an extremely terrifying amount of energy converging behind him, he finally exploded. Spare me, magical girl. I'm just passing by. In the past, Lin could only shout at a volume of 100 decibels. Now that he sensed the threat of death, he actually shouted at a volume of over 200 decibels. If this wasn't explosive, then what was? The young girl behind him exclaimed softly as the energy converging on her staff began to dissipate. It worked, and Lin couldn't help but exclaim in shock as he felt the pressure behind him disappear and the circle of light trapping him disappear. Soon, he felt someone poking him lightly from behind. He turned around to find that the extremely beautiful young girl had already flown in front of him and was sizing him up curiously. Who are you? How do you know that I'm a magical girl? The young girl sat sideways on her 6-feathered staff and tilted her head slightly. A pair of beautiful purple eyes blinked at Lin, appearing extremely curious. My name is Lin. I'm from Earth. I saw a character in a game dressed very similar to you. So I shouted it out in a moment of desperation, and Lin replied honestly. Earth. The pink-haired young girl's eyes lit up, and she pointed at Lin. I remember now. You're the most networked entrant in our academy, Lin. And Lin scratched his head and chuckled. It was clear that he was very famous in the academy. Even a magical girl knew his name. Although hearing this name made him want to cry, the young girl jumped down from her staff and walked toward Lin with a grin. You also know how to play League of Legends, right? And Lin nodded. He often played with his classmates in school, and he had reached the brick rank in the ranking competition last season, so he could be considered an expert in that game. Ah, that's great. The young girl was very happy. Then she took out a phone and handed it to Lin, and Lin stared blankly at the pink phone in his hand. You don't know how to use a cell phone? The girl asked when she saw Lin's confused expression. Yes, I know how to use it. And Lin reacted and started to turn it on. A cultivator handed him a cell phone. That scene was as weird as it could get, and Lin was puzzled. Speaking of which, why did you give me this phone? The girl took out another pink phone and said excitedly, let's have a solo match in League of Legends. If you win, I'll let you go. And Lin's heart was like a stampede of 10,000 horses, and his 10,000 faces were dumbfounded. Speaking of which, is she really a cultivator? Could she be an internet addict who transmigrated from Earth? Also, what's the point of playing League of Legends on your phone? Are you sure this is League of Legends and not King of Glory? Also, can a cultivation world connect to the internet? I've never heard of that before. And Lin had a million complaints he wanted to spit out, but under the pressure of the magical girl, he could only forcefully suppress them. He silently clicked open the League of Legends icon on the phone. Sure enough, after entering the game, he was greeted by the interface of King of Glory. His character's name was Cute Little Apple. After logging into the game, a window popped up on his interface. Cute Little Apple has sent you a solo match invitation. This message was clearly sent by the young girl. This phone really can connect to the internet. And Lin was extremely astonished. He clicked Accept and entered the hero selection interface. After entering the hero selection interface, he was dumbfounded. Holy F***, CK. Why are all the heroes and King of Glory characters from League of Legends? Right at this moment, the pink-haired girl leaned against Lin and said in a sweet voice, the array formation on these two phones can only transmit information over a limited distance. Come, let's get closer. The signal will be better that way. And Lin, this is indeed a phone that has been magically modified, and this game has also been magically modified. Her talent is far beyond my imagination. Should I praise her as a genius? And Lin chose the crafty enchantress hero. He originally wanted to choose Rue 1. That was the hero he was best at, but he really didn't know how to play the mobile version of Lightspeed QA. After both sides chose their heroes, the solo match that would decide Lin's life and death finally began. The two sat together on a huge rock, staring at the phone screen nervously, their fingers flying across the screen. The young girl chose Lux and even used the magical girl's skin. It seemed like she really liked this image. And Lin thought that if the two of them were to play this solo match using the computer, the young girl would use Lux and he would use Enchantress. Then, even if the young girl was a King of Glory level, he would still be confident that he could defeat her. This was a complete suppression of the hero. But now, the mobile version of League of Legends. And Lin really didn't dare to casually raise flags. Fortunately, the skills in this game hadn't changed. It was still the same 2 summoner skills and 4 hero skills, but all of them had been manually cast. The young girl's solo rule was, whoever broke the opponent's big crystal would be the winner. This rule determined that this match would be a long battle of attrition. But Lin still wouldn't forget to accumulate an advantage in the early stages. Lin played for a minute or two and started to get used to it. This wasn't much different from King of Glory's controls. After leveling up to level 2, he planned to use Crafty Enchantress to exhaust a wave. The young girl's skill, Lady of Radiance, was thrown very askew. The translucent singularity exploded behind Crafty Enchantress and missed. Then, Lady of Radiance was hit by Crafty Enchantress's QW combo, consuming 1/3 of her health. And Lin happily controlled Crafty Enchantress to dodge backward. While casting, he was only hit by a normal attack from Lady of Radiance. He smiled faintly and looked at his health. He had only lost 1/3 of his health. Huh? 1/3 of his health? And Lin, wait, am I seeing things? Why do I only have 2/3 of my health left? Lin blinked, a little dazed. At this time, he was accidentally attacked by Lady of Radiance, and his health dropped to 1/3. A frightening thought came to Lin's mind. His fingers trembled as he clicked on Lady of Radiance's stats. He looked at them nervously. A Doran ring of Radiance's stats were as follows. Attack power, 65 plus 150 spell strength, 25 plus 150, and Lin silently closed the stats window. His eyes were moist as he looked at the young girl beside him, who was immersed in the game in high spirits. At this time, his crafty enchantress was hit by Lady of Radiance's normal attack. First blood. The system's voice was loud and clear. Yay! Lady of Radiance raised her hands and shouted excitedly. Then, she noticed Lin's gaze and turned her head. Hey, why are you looking at me? Although I'm as beautiful as a flower, please focus on this game. It's not good to be distracted. I want a fair duel. A fair duel? And Lin's lips trembled. Finally, he mustered up his courage and asked, I have a question. Why does your Lady of Radiance's stats increase? Oh, you mean that? Lady of Radiance giggled and explained, I really like the Lady of Radiance, so I used the skill God's blessing on her. In response to this nonsensical answer, Lin nodded solemnly and returned to the game. He had already understood the meaning of that sentence. The young girl's meaning was, I'm using cheats, so what can you do about it?